drop the beat.
I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never. 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 I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I never liked him. I never liked racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. Racism. I'm a never Trump guy. Xenophobia. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him. I never liked him. I never. I'm a never Trump guy. 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 I never liked him. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I'm a never Trump guy. I never. 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 I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
Hello. Give me a second. Okay. Good morning, Jonah. Sorry to be tardy to the party. Sorry for being 10 minutes late. Just handling some business. The wife went on a coffee run, got me a little matcha. I also wanted to thank you guys. So effectively, from a stats-based perspective, we had almost as successfully... Wait, what's going on? I thought you don't stream on weekends. Today's not Saturday. Today's Friday. What's wrong with you? Yeah, today's Friday. What are you talking about? Also, I normally don't stream on weekends, Webtoon Enjoyer, but I do sometimes stream on nighttime. So just to give you guys a heads up, Friday nights, Saturday nights, the wife typically works. And so I don't really do streams on Friday nights or Saturday nights. But Sundays, she doesn't work. And so Sunday nights, I'll typically schedule a debate. I might be having some more schedule flexibility coming up just because of the wife's working situation. So we'll see how that shakes out. Just need to figure some stuff out first. But I might have more flexibility on weekends. I also might have more flexibility and the ability to do like a community night, game night every other week. So not every weekend, just because of familial commitments. But I might be able to have, we've been talking about doing a community night or a game night every Saturday. I might not be able to do every Saturday, but I might be able to do every other Saturday. I'm overcommitted as is, but it would be like really, really, really fun and cool to like kind of hang out in a vibe. Like it might even still be a stream. Like we might still be like streaming on Counterpoints 40K, or we might be streaming on Counterpoints Politics. I don't know yet. But my plan is to do like a gaming community night on Saturday nights when possible. I can't promise anything right now, but things are shifting. Okay, let's wait for Christian Valaris or Grassroots or another Oiler to pop in then, because Hood Monkey says Lord Connor, Wick's panel last night was a level of soy that even a vegan would question. Maybe we should do that. Let me explain my rationale in a second. Okay, so Jonah says good morning. Webtoon Enjoyer says, I thought you didn't stream on weekends. It's Friday for me. I don't know if you're in the UK or Eastern Europe or Australia or some shit, so it's Saturday for you, but, it's Friday for me. Well, Kissy John says, good morning. May your grill stay hot. May your beer stay cold. May you keep all your fingers while blowing things up. Amen. Amen. Gen X says, yo, I've been watching Legal Mindset Sweep for Tectone, and holy shit, that dude needs a medical intervention. Good morning, y'all. Well, that's what's happened with, I know a lot of people cite Legal Mindset in the Kiwi Farms area to be like, okay, well, here's this lawyer and he hates Destiny, and here's his analysis that says that Steven's going to prison. But then if you check out the drama sphere and the way that they cover Legal Mindset, they're like, this is a guy who got his JD, had a schizophrenic break from reality, then went to Asia in order to, do drugs and bang prostitutes. And so this guy's totally lost his fucking mind. And so it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny seeing people like cite Legal Mindset as like a good source of legal analysis, while other people are citing Legal Mindset as like a schizophrenic, drug addicted, hooker purchasing passport bro. It's actually kind of wild. So what I was going to say in reference to the content was let me tell you my rationale. So we've been fighting on the ice thing for arguably 2 weeks now because we had the Renee Good shooting. People didn't like my analysis on that, but I feel like they were willing to tolerate it because it was kind of like a fresh topic. So we were willing to like break into the topic together, and there was a lot more patience. Whereas I feel like now that we got into the Preddy shooting, there's less patience for the divergence in our perspective. And it's gotten ugly. Like I've been ugly. I've in my rage, I've killed several veteran community members who were being see you next Tuesdays. I get comments from, DGGers like West Coast Girl and other people basically saying like, oh, I used to like Connor, or I used to hate Connor, but then I liked Connor, but now I hate Connor again because of his chud takes. And I'm like, okay, cool. Turns out I advertised exactly who I am, and you only like me whenever I agree with you. So I was thinking that we were going to change pace and do the Kyle Kulinski. You remember that guy who did I watched 2 weeks of Hassan Piker, and this is what it is. I watched 2 weeks of Mike from PA, and this is what it is. That guy a couple of months ago I watched Crystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski for 2 weeks or for a week, and this is what it is. And that one, I was watching Pisco last night for a little bit, and he was sweeping pretty hard, man. He was sweeping pretty hard. Like when I accuse Pisco of being obtuse and purposefully not understanding things, I felt like that was his entire reaction, was purposefully not understanding what was being pointed out. And I found it kind of like humorous, but also absurd. So I was thinking that we could take a little humorous, absurd break from ice coverage. But also, if you guys wanted to go into, if you offered me the easy path or the hard path, and you call me out on it, I'll take the hard path every time. So if you say, hey, Connor, there's like an autistic panel last night where everybody's screaming at each other, acting like abolish ICE is a reasonable position. And then the conservatives are acting like it's totally justified and perfectly moral what happened in the Preddy shooting. And here's half a dozen personalities that you know and like fighting each other. I could do that content too. I have no objections to going once more into the breach. No objections whatsoever. It's bad for me. It's bad for you. It's bad for our relationship, but I'll do it. Jen Winkler says, did any of y'all see the shit about Ubiquiti supplying Russia with network equipment, a United States company? Shit is wild. No, but I'm not surprised that some people break sanctions. Andy B says, Kyle and Crystal hit piece over under 14.5 seconds before they blame Jewish people. I mean, Zionists. Yeah, that definitely happened last night too. Fell Runner says, I fleshed out the levels for you. People keep asking for clarification. I saw that. Thank you. Legal Mindset says, or Jen Winkler says, Legal Mindset is an arsler, 100% true. Or he's developed schizophrenia after he got his JD. Andy says, Legal Mindset is a passport bro, drama slop tuber. Nate the lawyer is a far better example if you want fair and reasonable legal analysis. Well, there you go. He got recommended a whole bunch for his Preddy coverage. Conserve says Nate really is good. He's not throwing red meat, just calls balls and strikes. Good. Jen Winkler says, exactly. After hearing how he covered Destiny as a criminal sex offender, but Tectone is innocent, even though he obviously did some pretty bad shit, is wild. Yeah. Conduit is the video essayist that I'm talking about. Sacred Snow says, you saw when Legal Mindset thought he was getting gang stalked in time. Oh, yeah. He was just high. Because he covered October 7th and someone was rude to him in public. Yes. Dude, Legal Mindset wasn't getting gang stalked. He was just really, really, really high. Andy B says, Nate spends half of his time fighting each teams because he refuses to play team sports. That's based, actually. Hearshot says Hassan and Fuentes are throwing haymakers at each other on Twitter. Based. Nice. Breaking Point says Pisco's meal ticket, to be fair. He has to be very aggressively defending Kyle and Crystal. I mean, but I don't think that's fair to who Pisco is. I think Pisco is mean enough that if somebody was just doing total bullshit, even if they were friends, even if they were clouded up, he would call them out. It's in his nature. So I think I think the sweeping is probably subconscious. I don't think it's like, I don't think Pisco was watching that being like, oh, I need to. Okay. So I think what happened, and by the way, I only saw 10 minutes of content. So if I mischaracterize anything, it is what it is. But apparently, I think this was part of the Hutch and Pisco conversation of the lefties and the Democrat Party are R-slurred. And so Hutch recommended the conduit piece, showing all the times that Cristobal and Kyle Kulinski were R-slurred over the course of a week. And so Pisco was watching it, but then I feel like he was like sweeping for his friends. But I don't think it's like, oh, I have to protect my meal ticket. I have to protect my clouded up friends. Like, I don't think that was it at all. I think he just like legitimately wanted to try to tear it apart. That way Hutch isn't correct that certain aspects of the left are actually just like toxic shitbirds. Christian Blair says, or you could double down. Jesus doesn't like a pussy. True. Let me, just because we probably have some new people, let me tell them the Jesus hates a pussy story real quick. So it'll be very, very, very brief. There's a book, I think it's called like No Angels or something like that. And it's a guy who infiltrates the Hells Angels motorcycle club, and he's an undercover cop. So what happens is there's a half a dozen, or this guy is doing undercover work. He's trying to arrest a guy, but he's in a car. The bad guy jumps into the back seat. So this guy jumps into the front seat, and then the bad guy shoots him in the back. And then I think everybody else mag dumps the bad guy and he dies. But this guy is like recovering from getting shot after doing undercover work. Well, he gets another job as a UC, and his job is to infiltrate the Hells Angels. So what he does is he gets half a dozen cops who ride motorcycles from whatever precinct he's a part of. They create a fake motorcycle club based off of a real motorcycle club. So they get a undercover informant who used to ride with a outlaw motorcycle gang that moved to Mexico because they were outlaws. They create their own fake chapter. They start going to biker bars as this fake chapter, and then they start hanging out with Hells Angels. And then the reason why it's so interesting is because I just made this story long. My apologies. It's in my nature. But the reason why Jesus Hates a Pussy emanated from that book was because these guys would like have to psych themselves up to go work with the Hells Angels. Because like the Hells Angels, they would just like ride at 110 miles an hour. They would violate every traffic law. They would, get into bar fights and beat the shit out of people. They were pimping girls out. They were running hard drugs. And these guys knew that if they were ever discovered as cops, like there's a strong chance that they would have been like killed and like thrown in a shallow ditch in the middle of the desert. So basically the way that they psych themselves up, all the guys who were a part of this undercover like 6 or 7 man fake motorcycle gang, they were all Christian, and so they would all pray together. And so the phrase that they used, the motto that they adopted was Jesus hates a pussy. And so whenever they were going to go do a fucked up operation, they would say that to each other to psych each other up for what they were about to do. It was pretty cool. So anyways, Good Grief Griff says those two are Pisco's connections to bigger media opportunities 100%. Yeah, but I think it's subconscious, not conscious. I don't think he's like, I need to protect my meal ticket. I think it's just, my friend, my liberal centrist friend who attacks lefties Hutch is attacking my progressive / more lefty clouded up friends, Kyle and Krystal. Therefore, I'm going to take a look at the criticism that Hutch is providing. That way, people can't accuse me of sweeping. But in doing so, I'm going to criticize the fuck out of the criticism. That way I can balance out this relationship between multiple parties. I think Pisco is autistic enough that if there was something particularly egregious, he would turn into a pit bull. So Short says, morning. Some people think Connor's Alex Preddy shooting opinion is from his decade of military and law enforcement experience. True Coggers know it's because of Connor's deep-seated hatred of Italians. I mean, good morning, Connor in chat, says Tezzy Boy. Hey, Tezzy, my second favorite lurker. Good to see you, Tezzy. Jen Winkler says, yes, Don Lemon arrested as violation of the Constitution. Trump suing the IRS for $10 billion that he'll award himself. Tulsi is stealing Fulton County ballots to pretend Trump won 2020. Just insane times. Well, they'll all die eventually. We all die eventually. Fellrunner says, I put conduit emojis on Discord. Conduit gave them to Kalinda, and I stole them. Based. Andy says he had what I think is the correct opinion that good was justified while Preddy was definitely not. Which one? Who are you talking about, Andy B? I think that good and... Oh, Nate the lawyer. Nate the lawyer. Got you. Fell says, stop typing and like the stream. That's correct. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. I do parasocially love you, and I want to thank you guys. Even if you donate $0 today, I already see that Deus Halcyon gifted 10 Valor Media Network memberships. Thank you for the Oil King. I do mean that. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I could not do this without Numinax, Deus Halcyon, Gen X, Christian Valeris, Grassroots Hegemon, Patriarch, Sen Patriarch, Fell Runner. I'm trying to think of people who donate routinely. Entropy, Larry Hutchinson. I know I'm forgetting somebody right now. Fashion 40 donates on occasion. Anyways, if I forgot your name, it's not because I don't parasocially love you or appreciate the super chats. Dr. Zayas. Who else? I know I'm missing an Oiler. Zanya gave $100 this past month. There's somebody else I'm forgetting. I know there's somebody else I'm forgetting, and there's probably half a dozen people that I'm forgetting. And the second somebody says their name in chat, I'm going to be like, "Fuck! Why didn't I thank them?" But the reason why I'm naming people in particular is because even if you guys donated $0 today, okay, this is January 30th. January 30th. So this is the last day of the month. Even if you donated $0 today, we would have hit 80% of what we did in December, and we had the best month ever in December. We had a fantastic month in December, and we hit 80% of that same metrics without breaking a sweat. So I want to thank y'all. I couldn't do this without you, and I'm sorry for being a bitch this past week and a half. Christian Blair says Kyle's good for criticizing Madiga. That's about it. I believe it. Andy B says Pisco is a true believer. His brain doesn't allow him to sway from the party line on anything. He's not a grifter. He desperately wants to be a high priest for the movement. Well, I mean, you said it, not me. Well, Kissy John says, didn't he become like a VP or something in the Angels? Yeah, he became clicked up. I don't think he became a VP, but I think he became like the chapter of his motorcycle gang became a clicked up motorcycle gang with the Blood Angels, with the Hells Angels, and they 6-7. They became clicked up. Hells Angels was a demonic gang. Yeah, they were doing some crazy shit for sure. Payday for me, payday for you. Thank you, Deus Halcyon. Much appreciated. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Did you watch, pre-watch Andy on JRE? I watched like 5 or 10 minutes of it. And they were talking about like deers with tusks. And I was like, okay, that's cool. But if they just keep it on chill, stoner, do you believe in God shit, I don't know if that's good content. Sun Patriarch says you could do without me, I think, bud, but I appreciate you. Well, I mean, I need my wall people, right? I need my wall people. Randy Chang says, does it count as grifting if you're also caught in self-delusion? No, it doesn't. I think if you're self-deluding, you're actually not a grifter by definition. I think grifting is saying things that you don't believe for money, clout, and attention. Tripingro, thank you for your support this month as well. I repented for my non-liking ways. Thank you. Well, QC John says, me, question mark, lol. Yes, well, QC John. I knew there was somebody at the tip of my tongue. I knew there was plenty of people at the tip of my tongue. So my apologies. Chipingro, thank you for the $2, by the way. And thank you for your chips earlier in the month. We need more crazy assassinations so counterpoints can make super chats. I mean, it does seem like whenever something extreme happens, attention and money goes up. So Politics JK says, you're great and all, Connor, but so is the community you built. They help the people around you, which is also a testament to you. I do think we have a disproportionately quality audience. I really do think that. Christian Lair says that counts. My prediction was correct. Okay, cool. Conservatism says they get into the government bootlicking after the deer and tusks. Joe is wearing a tinfoil hat about the protests aren't organic because they use Signal to organize. Yeah, that's cringe. Yeah, Andy B says something that I think is correct. That's why Alex Jones isn't a grifter. He 100% believes pretty much anything he says. Yes. I think that Alex Jones, even if he contradicts himself and if he says crazy shit, I still think Alex Jones is like deluded enough that he believes his own bullshit. Old school for 2. Thank you, King. And thank you for your chips this month. Kyle and Crystal equals dumb and dumber. Good morning. Good morning, old school. So I'm going to put it in the hands of the Oilers and the Chippers. Okay. So Christian Valeris, let me explain my rationale to you. Unless there's something meaty, I already know that I don't want to sift through 3 hours of a Andrew Wilson podcast with Joe Rogan, where he's on his best behavior, because that's not what I would want out of a Andrew Wilson, Joe Rogan appearance. I would want him to be being schizophrenic about like Christian nationalism and schizophrenic about bullying whores. And I would want Joe Rogan to press him and all that kind of stuff. So if Joe Rogan like watched like 30 minutes of Andrew Wilson bullying whores and doing random debates, and he's like, oh, this guy's funny, bring him on the show. And then he just kind of like vibe out, and Joe's stoned and Andrew is like drinking, some coffee, and they just kind of like vibe out while talking about politics. That's not really my speed. That could be good content for other people. That's not good content for me. Now, like I was saying, we've been fighting about the ICE shooting for the past 2 weeks, Renee Good and Preddy. And I think it's gotten to a point where it's like toxic. And I'm not trying to say that I'm a pussy or you guys are pussies, but we just know that we disagree with each other. Okay. We just know that we disagree with each other. Going over it for the 50th time is not going to bring us into alignment. You guys have your position. I have my position. We understand each other's positions. It is what it is. So my instinct is that if we watched it is old. It's like 2 months old, which is dead ass old in Twitch and YouTube politics. But if we watch the Crystal Ball in Kyle Kulinski, I watched 2 weeks of their content and here's what I saw piece. We could just chill. We could just enjoy the content every 5 to 10 minutes. Where Pisco was sweeping last night, I could kind of point out the thrust of the point being made. We could have a good time. We could vibe out. We only have to be here until 1 p.m. because that's when Dan Pace is coming over. And then we're going to Twitch where we're going to do some Valor Reacts. So we could have like a chill day before we roll into the weekend. If, however, you guys were like, hey, man, I don't want anything chill. I watched the Wick panel last night, and Soy Pill and Wick were wicking out, and I want to watch people wick out, and I want to watch people freak out before we roll into the weekend. Then I would go watch people freak out, and we could just fight again before we go into the weekend. I would just premise the content with the fact that I know that I'm going to piss you off. You're going to piss me off. It's going to happen, and we should go into the content knowing that we're just going to be mad at each other before we roll into the weekend. But it should be like fraternal anger rather than like hatred, because we know, like we know what's going to happen. I have my perspective. You disagree with it. You have your perspective. I disagree with it. We're going to fight a little bit. We're going to get over it. So I'm going to put that into the Oilers and the regulars' hands. I'm basically asking for a vote of, I'm asking chat right now. Vote so I don't have to make a choice. Do you want to do a different content that's spicy about ICE? Do you want to do Wick panel from last night where Wick and Soy Pill were wicking out? Or do you want to do a chill Kyle and Crystal Ball hit piece before we roll into the weekend? Okay. I'm asking. Fell says, wow, Connor just summed up the entire video. Unsurprising, to be honest. Good Grief Griff said, if only Joe had an Oliver pickle jar, it would have been a legendary interview. True. Conserve says, Joe says he's followed a lot of Andrew's content. He's literally a fan. It's amazingly cringe, but useful as an insight into how a directionless nation could cling to Christian nationalists. True. Andy B says, maybe 20 minutes of the entire podcast. Is that him trying to gently nudge Joe in that direction? Gotcha. Roaming says, Connor definitely pre-watched the Andrew Wilson podcast. No, I watched 10 minutes of it and I got the vibe. Sacred Snow says, I vote Conduit, fuck Crystal and Kyle, and I could use a chill day for my Friday. Okay. I mean, that's a regular, so that's a vote. I'll take that. Randy Cheng says, punctuating your news story with a commercial for your own dietary supplements. I always felt like that was Alex saying he's on the joke. Nice. Yeah, the Conduit episode will be way better than JRE. That's 2 votes for Conduit. Conserve says, the last 2 times I was promised Dan, I got 0. Dan, don't play games with us. Well, Dan agreed to it. So Dan was supposed to be here last week, but his meeting went long last week. That's why we didn't get Dan last week. And then he said that he was going to be here today. Is today Black Hawk Down Day on Twitch? Yes, it is. Yes, it is, Thomas Dudley. Yes, it is. Silver says, whatever you decide, I'll be in the shower naked listening to your voice. That is hot. Silver is like 7 feet tall, so that's cool. Grid says, I missed something. Who is Connor pissing off? I've been pissing off my audience. You know, don't say I'm audience captured, because I basically, like, my audience and I have been like, you know, the dogs that are like on either side of a fence and they're like snarling and moving their heads back and forth. That's been me in the audience all week. A week of those options. Chill, Kyle Crystal. I think the Kyle Crystals win. Andy says, I think a hit piece palate cleanser is the best. Ice has been nonstop screaming. It's annoying. Okay. Rob says, option 3, this is water, sets the tone, chill and contemplative, and then with Wick, the fuck out. So Rob, hold on. Let's do this. Let's go. How long is the this is water video? Is it 30 minutes? And therefore, if I was reacting to it, it would take me an hour to get through? Because what we could do is we could do Kyle and Crystal Conduit until 12 or 12:30. We could do This is Water for 30 minutes to an hour, and then we could roll into it. And I think that would be the perfect way to do it. Hood Monkey says, go with Wick. Get that blood pumping credit the weekend. I don't know. All right. I'm going to make a ruling on this. We're doing Conduit. Rest in peace to Don Levin. Don Levin's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. The charges are going to get thrown out. It's fine. We'll be fine. All right. From the Ashes for 2 says Destiny and Ryan Getty combo or Conduit. Ooh, Destiny and Ryan Getty. That could be fun, but I have a feeling that's going to be extremely white pilling, and we just don't do white pills around here. I try to white pill you, but realistically, we consume black pill while I try to white pill you. Just like a video of water. No, it's a philosophical video, Airborne Kite. Christian Blair says, segment where Connor discusses sci-fi topics, media coffee with Connor, even if he drinks tea like a bitch. Yes. So Christian Blair, what we're probably going to do, and I don't even have to change the title because I can just do the hit piece while we're rolling into it. I don't know if you were here yet, so I'm going to say it. So things might be changing logistically around my household. I won't get into the details until they're settled. It still might be a few weeks or a few months before things actually shift around. But I did want to give you all a heads up that I might have more flexibility on weekends. So the wife's job right now is she works Wednesday nights, Friday nights, Saturday nights, and she's off Sunday, which is why my debates have been Sunday night. And yet there might be a change in employment in logistics where every other weekend I might be able to take a night off on Saturday in order to do a community night. And then even on weekends where there's work stuff, I just might have more flexibility. So because it doesn't matter. I'll get into the details once they're settled. But I just wanted to give you all a heads up that maybe around March or April, I'm still going to be doing this job. 100% I'm still doing this job. But we just might have a little bit more flexibility. So if we have a little bit more flexibility, I just wanted to keep you posted that we'll do more stuff like that. So for instance, if I have a Saturday and Victoria's watching the kids and I'm not needed logistically anywhere, then we might do more fun content. Like I might just paint miniatures. Like I might just get a webcam, get a camera mount for my camera against the wall, stabilize my camera facing me, get a web camera with an arm on it. That way it's looking down at what I'm painting, and we'll paint miniatures and we'll just talk about sci-fi. Or we'll play video games. I'll figure out the streaming setup. Maybe I'll get like a second computer. That way I can play on one computer and I can stream from the other. That way we don't have performance issues. And then we could do stuff like collaborative Ready or Not, or collaborative Dark Tide, or collaborative Space Marine 2. And so we could have like 3 or 4 community members come play like a cooperative campaign or a cooperative game. We could do stuff like that. So I'm not saying like count on that in the next few weeks, but I would say within 6 months, we should be flexible enough to do something like that. So, you know, look forward to the flexibility, I suppose. Segwich No says, them doing the Ukraine bombed the beach in Crimea and killed civilians because an ATACMS was shot down en route to an Air Force base was where I was done with Crystal shit. Yeah. She's a very pretty arsler. Old School says, oh, okay. The $5, I missed it. I want to Connor answers questions about various science fiction franchises stream. I'm tiring of politics. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's on the horizon. That's on the horizon. Matter of fact, for the community days, I think that like politics is going to be my Monday through Friday. But I definitely think on the weekends, like weekends are for partying, right? So we might do like stretch Saturday, you know? And by stretch Saturday, I mean literally like, you know, you can't I don't want to get too spicy with it. But basically like I would dedicate some time to actually doing like yoga, stretching, warm-ups on stream, probably get some really cheap TTS, like $2 text to speech. Just like stretch for an hour, paint miniatures, play video games, hang out with the community, that kind of thing. I would love to do that every other Saturday. So we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Give us a few months. From the Ashes says, Destiny and Ryan Getty convo or conduit. I think we're doing conduit. Will QC John for 20 says, that was well played, Connor. Well played. Making me donate to remember me, laugh my ass off. No, of course I remember you well, QC John. And thank you for being our chaplain. I appreciate you. And I'm sorry for forgetting you. You were probably on the tip of my tongue as I was saying, I know I'm forgetting half a dozen people. And yet, that's all I can think of right now. From the Ashes for 2. I forgot From the Ashes. From the Ashes has like chipped a shitload this month. For 2 says, I'm desperate for some white pills, the legal kind. Yeah, we'll be fine. Don Lemon will be fine, guys. Don Lemon will be fine. Okay. It's going to get thrown out on First Amendment grounds, or even if he's convicted, it's going to be like, interrupting a public, being disruptive in a public place. So it'll be a misdemeanor. So the maximum he would serve would be like less than a year. And he'll be a martyr to the Constitution of the United States. So he'll start a GoFundMe and he'll make like $3 million off of his GoFundMe. And then he'll only spend $1 million on his legal defense and his jail sentence. So he'll have $2 million in the bank account and he can just like chill and get slowly detached from society. You know, he's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. Excuse me. Sacred Snow, also a chipper that I love. And community member, veteran community member. My wife tells me that every time she starts doing yoga again. Okay. Well, all right. I hope I don't disappoint. I hope I don't make up. I hope I don't make up something nice and then we just don't do it. Machiavellian, true. Nike Wing says, very pretty arsler. I love you, Connor. True. First Tea News says, Connor, if you're going to drink tea, make sure that you get lots of water too, lest you get a kidney stone. No. I pound water. Dana Calico Cloud says, white pill equals oxy vibe. No, Dana. And Dana, I appreciate you being a community member. So black pill, red. So there's the Matrix, right? Came out in the early thousands, red pill versus blue pill. I think a red pill sends you into the realm of the real and makes you understand reality, whereas the blue pill allows you to stay plugged into society. So a lot of red pillars, who are typically people who don't like women a lot, they say that if you take the red pill, then you become more conservative, more misogynistic, more distrustful of women, you become more materialistic, make a ton of money, use women for their bodies, use women for like their sex and procreative abilities, but don't get sprung up on all that like Victorian style emotional love bullshit. And don't give a woman half your shit through divorce, right? So that's like the red pill. It's like a men going their own way thing. Well, that's kind of become co-opted, I would say, in general by the right wing, where they've used the red pill analogy to say, oh, if you're like soy and liberal or progressive, then you're blue pill. And so they've co-opted it for politics. Well, black pill is nihilism. So there's like incels and volcels. They're people who are unable to get sex, and they're stereotypically male, but there are female black pillars as well. They're very statistically rare, but they do exist. And so black pillars are just nihilists. They just think like society is so fucked up and they can't fix anything at all. Therefore, they might as well give up and just kind of like wallow in their nihilism. Whereas white pillars are people who are like filled with hope. They're hopium. And I try to be a white pillar as much as I can, which is effectively like, no matter how fucked up shit gets, you just try to like hold on to hope and push for the best things possible, because even if things are fucked up, it's better to be optimistic and idealistic and push for ideals that you're going to fail in than it is to just like wallow in your own misery. And I would actually say that a lot of liberals and progressives, weirdly enough, they're like black pill right now. Meanwhile, they're probably in the best political position they've been in a decade. Like I get that Biden winning was cool or good, but Biden winning was like very anemic. He didn't win because he was like, you know, offering anything revolutionary or cool. He won because everybody hated Trump and the economy had been imploded by COVID. So actually having like, I don't know, a huge amount of momentum before the midterms definitely means that the Democrats could be white pilled and do a lot of cool shit with their political momentum. But I always trust Democrats to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. It seems to be something that they love to do. Demon says, what's the Crystal and Kyle hit piece? And did you see Tech Marine is on Space Marine 2 test server? No, I did see some videos about the Tech Marine. I've just never been that big of a fan of Tech Marines. I'm not going to lie. I'm just not. It's like a Space Marine who's a nerd, who's loyal to Mars, and he had the Omniscient axe is cool. His battle axe is cool. But everything else is like, I don't know. I'm not going to lie. The Adeptus Mechanicus freak me the fuck out. All right. They freak me out. Their transhuman bullshit freaks me out. Christian Valera says, I'll pass. The only thing I like stretching is my wiener. That's funny. Chapingro says, any of Plato's stories of Socrates are timeless. Interesting. Cool. All right, let's get cracking. Thank you to the 7 people who have already donated. Thank you to Deus Halcyon, Chapingro, Old School with 2 donations, From the Ashes with 2 donations, and Well QC John with the 20. Well QC John, I promise you I wasn't baiting you. I'm just tired and an idiot. So you're going to have to forgive me. But let me move you guys up here. I'm still going to be engaging with chat. I'm still going to be hanging out. It's still going to be a vibe, guys. It's still going to be a vibe today. It's Friday. You know, I know not everybody works Monday through Friday, but a healthy chunk of people do. So we're rolling into the weekend. You know, we should be vibing. The horrors persist, but so do we, you know. All of the Trump bullshit, this too shall pass, okay? This too shall pass. I watched Asmongold for a week. God. What a nightmare. All right. So let me do this one. Let me rewind it. Let me make sure the video quality is high. It is a longer one. So I'm going to do 1.1. I know it's going to be uncomfortable for your earballs, but I promise you it will make things go faster even a little bit. Even a little bit is going to be helpful. Otherwise, we're going to make it like 20 minutes and that'll be the entire day. So let me share screen. Oh, also thank you, Vazraka. I don't even think Vazraka has donated today, but Vazraka shows up almost every day, gifts a membership, doesn't say anything else, and then lurks. It's awesome. So Vazraka, thank you for being my favorite lurker. Tezzy, thank you for being my second favorite lurker. Brooklyn, thank you for being my third favorite lurker. So parasocial love to my lurkers. Let me find the chat where I'm at real quick. Then let me do an intro and let's do some content. There we go. All right. Sacred Snow says, Connor, I need you to do an accurate chipper roll call so I don't parasocially cry. All right. Well, Sacred Snow, thank you for being a chipper. And thank you for being a veteran community member. I'm serious. If I didn't call your name, it's not because I don't appreciate what you do. It's just because my brain isn't working and I have early onset dementia and I might be dying. So don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I still love you parasocially. All right. Let's get cracking, though. Hi, guys. Welcome to Counterpoints. My name's Connor. I'm a science fiction, politics, and philosophy nerd. I'm Marine Corps and law enforcement veteran. I would argue a real Republican, and I got a treat for you today. I got Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball. So I know that they're not on your screen yet, but I'm going to give you the vibes of who I think these people are before we get into it. They're progressive. They're annoyingly progressive, and they're Bernie bros and Bernie broettes. And Kyle Kulinski is a guy. You know what? I actually would hang out with Kyle Kulinski. Okay. I would hang out with Kyle Kulinski, and I'm sure he would be annoying, but I would still get baked with him. I would still let him, do kratom or whatever the heck he is doing. I would talk to him about politics. I would call him a progressive idiot, and I would have fun doing so. Now, this is going to be like the pot calling the kettle black, but what rubs me wrong about him is he's like overly smug while being incorrect and making broad generalizations about shit that he doesn't talk about. He's basically your stoner friend from high school who was actually above average intelligent and did well in school, but he wasn't as smart as he thinks he is. That's my vibe on Kyle Kulinski. And so he kind of has like the Noam Chomsky, America is bad because of its empire and capitalism is destroying the world and maybe we should reform it and maybe we should destroy it. But no matter what, he's still a progressive. And basically, he takes that attitude with Democrats too, where anything that's going wrong in the world is Democrats' fault. It's not because of Trump. It's not because of Republicans. Or if it is, it's only because Democrats are so weak and so feckless that they permit Republicans to be as bad as they are. So even when Republicans are doing bad shit, even when Trumps are doing bad shit, it's not actually Trump's fault or the Republicans' fault. It's the Democrats' fault for being so fucking weak. And Krystal Ball takes a similar tact. I would say that she was more like corporate media. I think she had like a more serious adult job and a more serious adult husband. But I'll just say it. I think she, while having some masculine features, she's still like a pretty attractive woman, especially when she like dresses up to the tens. And so she got a media job. She's been in media commentary for a while. I think she had more serious jobs a while ago, but she moved into an independent media venture with Sauger and Jetty. And they had their own show back in the day. I forget what it was called, but it was really, really, really popular. And it was on a alt media outlet called The Hill. And they probably made The Hill tens of millions of dollars through Sauger and Jetty being a Republican, Krystal Ball being a Democrat, both of them hating the institutionalists and them criticizing Washington, D.C. as these outsiders. Well, what ended up happening is I think The Hill pushed them on several mainstream topics. They pushed them to shill for, institutionalists a little bit more. They pushed them on Israel as a topic. They pushed them on a few other things. So Sauger and Jetty and Krystal Ball knew that they were talented enough to get their own show and have enough money to do their own production. And so they left The Hill, and then The Hill replaced Sauger and Jetty and Krystal Ball with that black chick who's really annoying. Somebody could say it in chat. And a white blonde guy who's kind of annoying. And that was like Krystal Ball's, not beginning, but that's definitely some of her lore. So she left her more serious job. She left her more serious husband. She started dating Kyle Kulinski. And now there's just kind of this like vortex of Noam Chomsky, pothead, anti-institutional political commentary. And yet they're large enough as media figures, as alternative media figures, that people take them seriously. I still have another thing to inject into this dynamic before we move into the content. So Pisco, my friend, who I debate all the time, who we endlessly piss each other off because we're oil and water. But realistically, you guys like me fighting Pisco because even if you hate Pisco or you hate me, we love to yell at each other and that can be entertaining. Pisco has been brought onto Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski's show multiple times for legal analysis and commentary. And so he's got a little bit of clout up from knowing these people. And the reason why I'm interested in this hit piece is because I think that Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski have 99 IQ political analysis that sucks, but Pisco was kind of sweeping for it last night. So I want to steelman this hit piece against Kyle Kulinski and Krystal Ball, and we'll just vibe to it as we roll into the weekend. Like the stream, share with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them. Parasocial love, thank you for being here. Let's go.
Final takeaways about the election. Every Democrat in swing districts that endorsed Medicare for All won re-election. In fact, the people who lost, it's the right-wing Democrats. Amy McGrath.
Chuck Schumer and the DSCC's hand-picked candidate, Amy McGrath.
She got absolutely obliterated by Mitch McConnell. Imagine losing a race to Mitch McConnell.
And the bizarre consultant-driven strategy of painting herself as more pro-Trump than Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. the Grim Reaper.
She's performed exceptionally well, however, in the only area the Dem establishment really seems to care about, that would be money.
That's not a compelling message.
Charles and Jamal have surged on the strength of clear-eyed messages about racial and economic justice.
This is as good as you were going to do when you don't really believe in anything.
For some reason, the National Democratic Party establishment has thrown all in with their white opponents.
Even though the lefties got reelected in gigantic margins and the blue dogs got wiped out.
Isn't it funny how black voters should be central and determinative as long as they are acting in concert with the whims and desires of the establishment?
Honestly, this is as close as you can get to a validation of populist left politics.
All their talk about valuing diversity is so much bullshit,
And probably the only things that they're going to get done
and it serves to further their corporate and imperialist agenda.
are more.
Oh, did I mention that on top of being isolationists, anti-institutionalists, they're also economic populists? Holy shit.
Right-wing priorities or center-right priorities.
I could swear that they fight harder against any sort of Bernie-style progressive
I fear they're going to cut Social Security and Medicare.
than they do against the similarly corporate and military-industrial complex-friendly Republicans.
We have to do it. We have no choice. And then act like it's a win.
Oh, it's almost like Black Americans, like all Americans, are not a monolith.
The fact of the matter is, and I know this is so dark to say, but I think it's true, I don't think it matters what Hamas does at this point, because Israel is they're going to continue with the genocide, and they're going to try to complete it. And so if they give up the hostages or if they don't give up the hostages, the end result is effectively going to be the same. That they're going to be obliterated. They're going to be wiped off the map.
Okay, man. Sorry, I need to rewind this real quick because I do have... What? Oh, I pressed the wrong button. Okay. Everything that I told you in the intro is so true. And I know this guy, man. I went to family reunions in the Northeast. Okay. I was born in Concord, Mass. And my family is from Newton. And we used to go up to Boston and New Hampshire to visit family. And we had like family reunions a few times when I was a kid, like probably, I don't know, 7 to 15 was when I would remember most of this shit. And the guy who looked like this at my family reunion was like an uncle, but he wasn't a blood uncle, right? All of my uncles are married with kids. I think there might have been one who didn't get married and have kids. It was their friend from high school that was like an alcoholic or a pothead and said like really inappropriate shit in front of the kids. And it was funny because like I'm a teenager or I'm about to be a teenager, and hearing a drunk adult or a stoned adult say something crazy is funny. But then when you turn 40, like I'm about to turn 40, and I'm kind of that guy now. I'll say some crazy shit every now and then, definitely, especially if I got a couple of beers in me. But you also kind of realize that there's a difference between being like the fun drunk uncle or the fun stoner uncle and being like the bitter, angry drunk uncle or the bitter, angry pothead uncle who's not funny. And so I would say Kyle's probably right in the middle of those two things, because I think those like drunk and stoner uncles, they were the boomer generation, so they weren't as crazy. But I swear to God, some of them had a hoop earring. And for those of you who are not looking at your screen, Kyle Kulinski has bleach blonde hair like Eminem from 2002. And he has a hoop earring in his left ear, which is a fucking wild fashion statement. But you know what? He rocks it. It is what it is. So I'm sorry for bringing up some childhood trauma in reference to my perception of Kyle Kulinski, but I don't think I'm wrong either.
Son of an emerald whore, starting again!
Apparently, I can't go more than a few days without seeing something that drives me up the wall. Maybe I need to go on a social media diet. But whatever the reason, I am now aware that apparently Matt Gaetz on Tim Pool's show
That is so freaking weird.
literally making the choice on the spot whether or not they're going to buy this congressman. I mean, it's just
Is an adequate source of information so long as it's against a group I already don't like. You know, I don't actually think the catty kind of gossip a lot of people enjoy is that harmful, at least on the consumer side. The he said, she said about what they did kind of thing. But the ways it's become intertwined with political discourse is something I've been wary of for years.
so much bullshit.
We'll get into that. For now, Krystal Ball and Kyle Kulinski,
The only buried news team.
have been in the political commentary space for years at this point. Kyle has his YouTube channel Secular Talk with now 2 million subscribers and 12,000 patrons on Patreon, and has appeared places like the Young Turks
I don't know.
and Joe Rogan, while Krystal Ball has moved through places like MSNBC, The Hill,
So much bullshit.
and now has her YouTube channel Breaking Points with her previous co-hosts Sagar
We're not a monolith.
and Jetty with Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. People want to hear
I feel like this is validating my introduction segment.
what they have to say.
So much bullshit.
But maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. I don't like passing judgment just based off of individual clips that get passed around potentially out of context. So I watched a week of both their shows, and I'm going to tell you what I learned.
Binders Full of Woman says, only way you're going to enjoy this video is if you already have a hate boner for Kyle, and especially if you're obsessed with defending Israel and soying out when they're criticized. Perfect. It sounds like this video was made for me, Binders Full of Woman. Cosmer says, Connor, in these days I'm starting to lean more right wing. I don't know if it's rational or not. It's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it, Cosra. Okay, so sorry. For those of you who don't know, I'm going to take a brief aside because I love my community member, Cosra. Thank you for surviving the Iranian revolution so far, the second Iranian revolution so far. Society becomes disordered, in my opinion, when you don't have a sane right wing. Of course, that's true of the left wing as well. But the right wing is Chesterton's fence, right? It's the fence that's already in there in society from, you know, social institutions that have evolved over centuries or millennia. And we have to decide whether or not we're reinforcing the fence or removing it altogether, or if we're building a new one or something like that. And so when the right wing is disordered, they want to throw fences up around a bunch of stupid shit, right? And I'm using this as like a metaphor or whatever but Iran is the perfect example, right? What I would say is a stupid example of conservatism throwing up fences around is, I would say, maybe this is a little bit Islamophobic, but I would say hijabis and niqabis. If you want to be a hijabi on a voluntary basis, good for you. You know, be a sexual moderate. I don't give a shit. As a matter of fact, I would probably encourage it. If you want to be a niqabi and you want to wear like an entire outfit that covers your entire body except for your husband, as long as you do it on a voluntary basis, I don't think I really give a shit. I would kind of think that you were brought up in a giga conservative society, which is why you want to be a niqabi. But once again, if you're like an 18-year-old or 25-year-old adult and you decide that you want to be a niqabi and nobody's like pointing a gun to your head, good for you. But I think that the conservative Islamic world loses its mind when it forces those things at a state level, where it says like, no, you're going to be a niqabi. No, you're going to be hijabi. No, if we catch you doing anything outside of the norm in reference to drugs or sex or anything like that, not only are we going to punish you, but we're going to like imprison you, beat you, maybe kill you. That's like the kind of thing where we have to balance the conservative desire to protect society from itself versus allowing human beings to be human. And I think that liberalism, as flawed as it is as a system, I think that asking the question of who is being harmed by this action, and is the attempts to prevent the harm more harmful than the action itself? And I think asking those questions actually does guide society in a better way. And so, Kazra, your desire for being a little bit more right-wing might be just because the right wing and left wing are out of whack. So you want an authority to step in and impose morals on society that makes sense. Okay. And that's like, I would say that's why I'm temperamentally right wing. That's why I've been fighting my audience about law enforcement shit for the past 2 weeks, because I think that they go too far in trying to remove social and criminal barriers. But anyways, let's not fight about it. Let's just vibe out with the content. But Kazra, I'm happy to see you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you survive the tumult in your country. And I hope that Iran emerges in the next several months or years as a stronger and more free society.
And if you like this video and want to see more like it, you can subscribe to my Patreon. No obligation. I'm still having trouble figuring out what perks to offer there anyway. So if you have any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. I would genuinely appreciate it.
Oh, sorry, real quick. From the Ashes with 5, which chaos god do you think you would unwillingly fall to? If in doubt, just accept your grandfather into your life. Oh, unwillingly? Nurgle 100%. Sorry, real quick, just in case people don't know. I'm a huge 40k nerd. There's 4 gods of chaos in the Warhammer 40k setting. One of them is about sex and excess and drugs and violence to the extreme. It's a god of extremes. That's Slanesh. There's one god of change that is actually kind of like neutral. They're actually not really evil, at least from their perspective, but they do like playing games and lying and, you know, mutating people into bird demons and all sorts of crazy shit. Tzeentch is crazy. Then I actually would willingly fall into the arms of Khorne. I love being angry. I love blood. I love skulls. I think all that shit's metal. And effectively, if I could follow Khorne, which is the blood god and the god of war and skulls and blood, then what I would say is like, if it's like doing steroids endlessly and constantly being angry, but never having a heart attack and always being able to kill people when they piss you off, that actually sounds like a version of paradise to me. So I would actually, I would happily be a devotee of Khorne. However, I hate being sick. And that's where the Plague Father comes in. Grandfather Nurgle makes you immortal, but he also makes it so you can't feel pain. So your body is rotting and filled with disease, but you infect other people with said disease. But the way that Nurgle captures you is by infecting you with disease that is so like it like cracks your bones and it gives you a fever and you feel like shit and you just want to die, but it won't let you die. And so it keeps you in this like limbo of misery, but also being alive. And that's how he attracts his followers, as he says, well, if you follow me, then I'll end the pain. And depending on how useful you are to me, I'll make you immortal. I'll make you not experience pain. I will show you beautiful despair, and then you can spread my gifts across the galaxy. So and I'll tell you, I've had fevers before. I've been so sick before that if a demon offered that to me, I might have taken it. Now that I know what Nurgle is like, I hope that if I was a loyal servant of the Emperor, I would just kill myself. But, you know, there's a strong chance that if I didn't know what Nurgle was, and if I wasn't like a strong devotee of the Emperor of Mankind, then I would accept Nurgle. So Nurgle is actually my least favorite. Cool character. Don't want to fall into his service.
Whole bunch of breaking news to deliver for you here. We got a lot of stuff going on, and most of it sucks ass.
We begin in Kyle's spacious backyard as he starts in on Trump blowing up Venezuelan and apparently Colombian boats in the name of stopping quote-unquote narco-terrorists who have yet to be proven as such.
The most recent boat that they blew up, according to the Colombian president, was a Colombian fishing boat, and they killed a number of Colombian citizens. The Trump regime is trying to overthrow Maduro and steal the oil, by the way, as Trump admitted in speeches publicly.
Okay, would we invade Venezuela for their oil? This is
Skillful Dunn says, I've chipped a little, notice me. Hi, Skillful Dunn. It's good to have you, King.
a little complicated, so I'm going to explain it as simply as I can. Venezuela's oil is shit, their refineries are shit, their export process is shit. Reportedly, with Marco Rubio and Stephen Miller's influence, this is really just about immigration issues, drugs, and Venezuela's government.
Like, at least back...
Okay, this is where I'm going to have to disagree and go in the middle. Venezuelan oil is shit. Its processing is shit. Its export processes are shit. That's totally true. And it would take a decade to get Venezuela back to where it needs to be a major oil producing power in the world. However, it still sits on almost a third of the world's proven oil reserves. And if you cut their oil with Middle Eastern oil, you can make a viable product. As far as I understand it, the crude from Venezuela is so dense that it needs to be cut with lighter petroleum in order to be able to be processed by machines. But that doesn't mean that it's useless. You could probably cut it with petroleum crude that is not as dense and kind of shitty in the opposite direction. And then boom, you got like a third of the world's oil reserves available in the Western hemisphere. It's still worth billions upon billions upon billions of dollars, maybe even trillions. So to just say that there's no motivation for the energy industry to be involved in bringing Venezuela to heel and fucking with China and Iran and Russia via Venezuela, I don't know if I agree with that. I think that's taking political comment, or that's taking like establishment political commentary a little bit too seriously. So right now I'm stuck between the middle of Kyle Kulinski's stoned rants and Conduit's liberal certainty.
During the Bush era, which was fucking horrible, they had to at least try to lie to you.
Then he lays into Maria Corina Machado, the opposition leader in Venezuela, because she won the Nobel Peace Prize and dedicated it to Trump.
They probably knew she was going to turn around and dedicate it to him, and they gave it to her anyway.
Then asked Netanyahu to regime change her country? I am so curious about the context there.
Begged Benjamin Netanyahu to invade her own country to topple Maduro.
She didn't beg Netanyahu to invade Venezuela. She sent a letter to him for support in passing a UN resolution to establish regime change in Venezuela because Maduro is a dictator. That letter was also in 2018. Kyle talks about Republicans denouncing the Note Kings protests.
We got to talk about this war on free speech, man.
Speaking from the future, I'm glad those went off without a hitch, and the bloviating about the people involved being Hamas-supporting Marxists didn't turn into actual crackdowns.
4 to 6 million Americans who partook in those protests. And according to them, you're all terrorists. So I think we know who the good guys are in this scenario, and it's not the fucking feds, I'll tell you that much for sure.
After that, Kyle's pissed at Democrats for voting for the military budget. First, he praises the ones that were willing to vote for cuts.
So I got to give credit to these Democrats who voted the right way.
But he has a message for the rest.
What the fuck is wrong with you? The guy is a fucking fascist. Almost all the Republicans and Fetterman, like all of you guys, I'm sorry, you're just evil.
After that, we get to Barry Weiss taking over CBS.
They want to turn it into a both sides factory, and they want to turn it into a Zionist factory. This Zionist billionaire wants to make sure, hey guys, you need to be pro-Israel, and don't be so hard on Trump. You're going to get genocide apologia. You're going to get Holocaust apologia.
Don't you say that. Don't you ever say that.
And remember, guys, this is at the same time that Zionists just took over TikTok as well, and they're sort of purging the pro-Palestine content over there.
Kyle apparently believes that because Larry Ellison bought TikTok, some Zionist millionaire is going to scrounge together the entire GDP of Israel in order to buy YouTube from Google.
YouTube is one of the last platforms standing that, hasn't been totally taken over by Zionist hacks. Some Zionist billionaire could offer Google or Alphabet an offer they can't refuse. Tell them a number they can't refuse.
U.S. tourism is down substantially because Trump's a prick who pissed off Canada and the rest of the world.
Canadian visits in particular fell 35% in September alone.
And also he canceled a massive solar energy project.
Like economic self-sabotage.
Also, here's where I noticed that the reflection of his laptop in his glasses makes it look like he has googly eyes. Try to unsee that now. After that, we learned that ICE has been trying to impersonate day laborers to find illegal immigrants, and I hate that I find this 22 Jump Street ass impression of an impression so funny.
Hey, Holmes. We sure are illegal, aren't we, S.A.? Oh, yeah, we are, Holmes. We're totally illegal and stuff, man.
My name is Jeff.
This...
Okay. Number one, I see you, Kyle Kulinski. I hate your politics. I think you're annoying. I think economic populism is ass cancer, but that was mad funny. I'm happy that there's enough of like a thousands bro in here in order for him to do like a shitty Mexican accent. And I'm happy that I was immediately thinking that I needed to pull up the 22 Jump Street thing where Jonah Hill is doing like actually a pretty good like cholo Mexican accent where he's like, hey, yo, this is Spider. And, like, Spider, tell him about what you were saying the other day, man. That shit was so crazy. Can you tell that story? And then, Jeff, I don't even think his name is Jeff or whatever, but he's like, my name is Jeff. Because he can't do accents. And their whole, like, bad acting, like, starts a gunfight. That was pretty classic. I'll also say that, apologies to my few Mexican American audience members. Okay. So I think the South Park Massa episode there's this episode of South Park from like 10 or 15 years back where it's Free Willy. For those of you who don't remember Free Willy is a kid who basically goes to SeaWorld and he starts talking to the orca, and the orca kind of looks like depressed and anxious, and they die in captivity faster than they die in the wild. And it looks like the orca is getting more and more depressed and on the verge of dying. So the kid decides, and he launches this crazy plan to kidnap the orca and free him into the wild. And so that was like a huge hit in the 90s and thousands, was this movie about a kid abducting an orca. And so what happens in this South Park episode is the SeaWorld guys use the intercom system to fuck with the kids. And they start fucking with the kids in order to convince them that not only should orcas be free, they're actually an alien species that belong in outer space. And so he needs to get back, like they need to free Willy, but they also need to get him back to the moon. And so what they do is they start calling every country, trying to find like a space program that is cheap enough that they can afford it, and they could like fly the orca to the moon. And so they call these countries, and it's too expensive, but they eventually call Mexico, and the Mexican like aerospace engineer is like, it's like 6 guys who all look like janitors. And they're like, hey, how much would it be in order to fly an orca to the moon? And then like a sleepy Mexican accent is like, 300. And then and Stan is like, $300,000? That's more than what Russia wants. And they're like, $300. It's they kidnap the orca. I promise I'm not stoned. They kidnap the orca. They drive him down to Mexico. They launch the orca into space. The Mexicans like play a mariachi band in celebration of launching the orca into space. And then the final frame of the episode is the orca on the moon dead. And it's like the most aggressive freeze frame of a dead cartoon animal I've ever seen in my entire life. And it like, I don't know if this hits for you. Maybe you just had to be there. But 15 years ago, the first time I saw it, I think I was laughing so hard that I was crying. For me, that was like peak South Park. They were being racist, but they were also like showing you the endearing nature of some kinds of people. And it all results in the death of a wild animal. God, what a classic.
This is what they're doing. U.S. variety of fascism is just more embarrassing than anything else.
Someone's never seen The Producers.
Myself.
Holy shit, I love The Producers. If you haven't seen the Matthew Broderick version of The Producers, go watch it as soon as we're done with stream today. It's amazing. At the risk of going on another media-based rant, 2 or 3 guys, or actually it's 2 guys and Uma Thurman, who was smoking hot in the movie. Matthew Broderick, I think it's Nathan Hale. I forget the guy's name, but he's a voice actor in a ton of Disney shit. And he's also, he sings, and I think he's done Broadway as well. But Matthew Broderick, Nathan Hale, I think is his name, Uma Thurman, they launch a Ponzi scheme because Nathan Hale, even if I'm using his wrong name, he keeps producing flops, he keeps producing bad plays. And so they decide to intentionally produce a flop. That way they can defraud all the investors and walk away with the money. But what they end up doing is they find a Nazi apologist who's played by Will Ferrell, who's hysterical in this version of The Producers. The original one was by Mel Brooks, and I haven't seen it. I'm not going to lie. But the new Producers, they hire Will Ferrell, who's an unapologetic Nazi who wrote a script praising Germany and Nazi Germany and Hitler. Then they find a gay director who makes the play obnoxious. And so they think that they have this like guaranteed flop because the material is so offensive and because the director is so like incompetent and obnoxious. And so they create the Ponzi scheme. But what ends up happening is by combining a terrible pro-Nazi German script with a gay director who's incompetent, they accidentally create brilliant satire, and then Springtime for Hitler becomes a smash hit, and then they get caught in their Ponzi scheme. and it's like a fantastic musical comedy. It's amazing. I don't even like musicals, and the producers is amazing.
Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with Israel.
Oh no.
For my own purposes, I'm not going to investigate every single attack unless there's some specific circumstance or context. It's possible that some accusations, if they are included, can be effectively countered, but that's a point of clarification, not me trying to preemptively discredit the attacks themselves. The main issue I'm going to take with Kyle's Israel reporting is much stupider, but that's because for all intents, not me his primary source is Twitter.
Tommy Vietor points out Israeli government officials are talking about the Gaza ceasefire very differently than Trump. Kyle leader. First thing we're doing is getting our hostages back. After that, we'll see. Middle East Eye is reporting that they already broke it, and they have video of them violating the deal, breaking the deal. We also have the Times of Gaza. This was, I believe, the fact of the matter is, and I know this is so dark to say, but I think it's true. I don't think it matters what Hamas does at this point, because Israel they're going to continue with the genocide, and they're going to try to complete it. And so if they give up the hostages or if they don't give up the hostages, the end result is effectively going to be the same, that they're going to be obliterated. They're going to be wiped off the map.
The benefit of being from the future is that I can be thankful that, at least for now, he's wrong. But there's a difference between Israel being overly aggressive during the ceasefire and they're going to finish the genocide now.
I hate living through history. I hate it. Witnessing a new Holocaust, a new genocide.
Don't make me do a history of the Holocaust so that you can see why these two things are not at all comparable.
Okay, listen, guys. I get that whenever you start to explain, and I see it's Nathan Lane, not Nathan Hale. Okay, well, his last name had 4 letters in it, so, oh my God. Tony. That'll be a deep cut for the people who actually saw the movie. Anyways, the point is that you have to understand that the way the Holocaust was explained to me, and maybe I just have autism, so I have this thing that jacks up the way that I create content and become an influencer. I try to say things that represent reality, and then I try to make sure that not only that my words represent reality, I also try to make sure that the people around me, their words represent reality. And when their words don't represent reality, we fight about that. Okay? And the reason why we fight about that is because the way that the Holocaust was described to me is it was mass execution of 6 million people. So effectively, in the 20s and 30s, after World War I, the Nazis rose to power through manipulating the economic and social grievances of Germany. They blamed the Jews and the bankers and international Jewry and the Jews who helped out with the Soviet Revolution. And they said that there's this mass anti-nationalist conspiracy that's effectively going to erase white people as a whole, but Germans in particular, through this post-racial, post-nationalist, international socialism. And it's all a manipulation by the Jews in order to destroy the white race. And that was the theory at the time. And so using that motivation, they dispossessed ethno-religious minorities across the board. They dispossessed the Roma. They treated Slavs as second-class citizens, like a feral, less advanced white race. They treated French and English people like cousins, but realistically, they still need to be subservient to the Germans. And then, Germans were the master race. And they appealed to this Aryan mythology of effectively a new Moses story, where the Aryan people had emanated from Eurasia, but then migrated and settled in Germany. And it was their destiny to rule the planet. And so based on that ideology, they justified the mass slaughter of 6 million people. And so when I look at Gaza, I still see an attempted ethnic cleansing. I still see, people getting treated horribly. I still see civilians getting massacred. But when I compare 6 million direct deaths on an industrial scale to 70,000 direct deaths and 200,000 indirect deaths, and the population still living there to this day, 3 years after the conflict. Yeah, 6 million allegedly. Yeah, thanks, Hood Monkey. Thanks for the correction. But I get frustrated, right? I get frustrated because they could have done a Holocaust already. This was shot in 2020. It's 20. I mean, I don't even know if this was shot in 2020, but some of the first clips that we were seeing. No, this had to be post 2023 because it was October 7, 2023. So this was shot since October 7, 2023. Well, dude, it's what is it? It's January 2026. So what's going to happen when we get to like October of 2026? It's been 3 years and there's no new Holocaust. Why would I believe you about fucking anything at this point if you're saying that there's a new Holocaust and it didn't happen? Why would I trust any of your analysis? You fucking suck. You suck ass. Real Serious says, have you seen Band of Brothers? Dude, not only have I seen Band of Brothers, I have too many projects right now, okay? But let me tell you about my projects. Thanks for sidelining me. It'll be entertaining. Speaking of which, like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. Old School says, you get oil for mentioning Mel Brooks. I love Mel Brooks. You should watch this film To Be or Not to Be. Based. Thank you for the 5, King. Thank you for the chip. So chip if you got them, oil if you got them. We already had an amazing month, so I don't care if you donate, but thank you so much for your financial support and your viewership. But let me tell you about the projects real quick. Counterpoint's 40K. Brings in $1,500 to $4,000 a month. If it's a really good month, it's $4,000. If it's a slow month, it's $1,500. It is what it is. Okay. So that's not enough to be independent. Streaming helps me make up the balance. That allows me to live my life. My salary from Valor Media Network, my rev split with Valor Media Network, my independent channel, even though the VODs are not doing well, which sucks, and I need to figure out the formula, that allows me to pay my bills. So I'm a happy camper. I'm happy to work for social media. I'm building Counterpoint Sci-Fi and Counterpoint Star Wars by copying the Counterpoint's 40K formula, but applying it to sci-fi and applying it to Star Wars. The metrics aren't like incredible right now, but the comments are the same level of passion that I get on my 40K channel. And so as a result, I think if I keep going, I'm gonna succeed with Counterpoint Sci-Fi and Counterpoint Star Wars. So I'm just gonna keep going with that for the next year. I eventually want to do Counterpoints Combat. And Counterpoints Combat is going to be like real world breakdowns of combat footage, but also breakdowns of some of the greatest war films ever created. Band of Brothers, Saving Private Ryan, Generation Kill. I'm trying to think of what other good ones, but I want to do like Counterpoints Combat and Counterpoints Crime. And then Counterpoints Combat, I want to focus on like war films, and Counterpoints Crime, I want to focus on law enforcement stuff. I just don't have enough hours in the day, and I need to get my projects that I've already dedicated my brain to. I need to get them off the ground before I take on any more projects. But yes, I've seen Band of Brothers, and yes, eventually I want to break it down. Anyways, back to Kyle Kulinski talking about the new Holocaust that hasn't happened yet.
U.S. is leading the way, and Israel's leading the way, and now none of us are safe.
Van Jones and some other journalists are apparently doing a fellowship that Kyle claims is about pro-Israel propaganda.
In a new journalism fellowship explicitly created to help Israel win its information war.
He's referencing a Dropsite News article, which is not great.
There are 16 mainstream journalists who are on Israel's payroll, getting probably paid a shitload for doing Israeli propaganda.
He's referring to the Karsh Fellowship, intended to mentor 10 journalists on how to cover Jewish stories. The founders cite the Al-Ali hospital bombing, when multiple outlets immediately jumped on the first estimate put out that hundreds of people were killed, when the real number was much lower, as the reason it was founded. Kyle is grossly exaggerating the extent of this, even if the founders have positioned themselves explicitly as pro-Israel and anti-Hamas.
Van Jones, remember he was on Bill Maher's show, and he made a joke where, oh, you go on social media, it's dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby, Diddy, dead Gaza baby, dead Gaza baby. Oh, that's because of Qatar and Iran, and they're waging this information war. Total nonsense. The reason why that stuff is out there is because it's happening and people are interested in it and they want it to stop.
Qatar and Iran are very obviously running disinfo campaigns, given that there have been multiple instances of people using footage from Syria and claiming that they're Israeli attacks.
Aw, Dylan Burns reference. For those of you who weren't looking at your screen, Dylan Burns had a tweet in there saying that this was old Syrian civil war footage.
Don't like seeing babies getting blown up in their face on a daily basis. That's why it's out there.
I mean, thank you for laying.
Wait, hold on. Binders Full of Women says, get ready for 2 hours of narrator smugly implying Crystal Kyle are wrong without pointing to how they're wrong. Also, if he disagrees with her position, it means he's lying. Hold on. Binders Full of Woman. He just showed specifically how he's wrong. He just said, hey, Tehran, Iran, and Qatar are provably doing information warfare through social media, same ways that the Russians were. And then he put articles on your screen. Then he also said, that this information warfare is oftentimes based on unreliable information. And then he showed like half a dozen social media posts that were using Syrian civil war footage as evidence that some people are lying about what's happening in order to prop up their own propaganda. So if you're not watching the content and you're not looking at the evidence presented, that's not the narrator's fault. Like, okay, so he didn't make a full-fledged argument. Are you capable of looking at a screen, reading information, and then deducing what is being implied? Because if you are, you could just like fire 3 neurons in your brain, and not only would you have an argument, you would also have the evidence for said argument, and then you could decide whether or not you want to validate said argument with the evidence provided. So my recommendation is like, you know, you're already firing probably a few neurons in order to keep yourself alive. Fire like an extra 2 or 3, and you could probably understand what the narrator is pointing out.
Out in clear terms the reason that might be used in a disinfo campaign because of the strong emotional reaction it incurs.
Meanwhile, Israel's literally like,
Xenocrat says that he's a Hutch chatter. Based. I wish Conduit was a Counterpoints chatter.
buying up our media right in front of our faces. Zionist billionaires are buying like every outlet right in front of our faces and making Barry Weiss fucking emperor of news.
This is veering very quickly from legitimate concern to Jews control the media. Excuse me, Zionists.
Every single one of these so-called journalists should be fucking fired. All these people are whores, and Israel's got a lot of money, and they'll fill their fucking pockets.
The people in the fellowship get $4,000. I couldn't find what the mentors get, but I assume it is not a lot. Then the Virginia GOP candidate for governor said it's not discrimination to fire someone for being gay. It is. I don't need a source to confirm that. Kyle.
Shapingro for 2 says, for the fence, praise the cog lord. Thank you, Shapingro.
That's right.
Look, Spanberger's not the greatest Democrat. You know, I have issues with her, but any Democrat with a fucking pulse is better than these Republicans.
Trump reversed a Biden administration regulation to ban a forever chemical.
When we had fewer regulations back in the day, there was a river famously in the U.S. that caught fire and it burned.
Pete Hegseth got Botox. That's a fun one.
They think he's literally manic. Like he might be bipolar and he's going through a manic phase.
Trump tried to ban flag burning, and someone from Tennessee got arrested for posting Charlie Kirk memes.
This is how, and by the way, this shows the lack of resistance too, right, from the Democrats, that he feels like I could just go out there and say, quote, we took the freedom of speech away, and, you know, think, I'll be fine. The Democrats won't react. I won't be clobbered over the head. I hope Democrats are cutting ads with him saying this right now. Because shouldn't you have to know at least a little bit to be fucking president of the United States? Well, apparently not.
I mean, that's preferable, but ultimately the standards are set by the electorate.
I'm fucking pissing into the wind here doing my job. Meanwhile, there's this whole right-wing apparatus, and they seem to drive whatever story, whatever narrative they want to drive home. They seem to be able to drive that home.
Now I'm wondering, what did Kyle think about Taylor Lorenz's article about chorus?
Welcome.
All right. Let me pause this real quick because Andy B has pointed out something twice that I think is cool. Kyle has high school dance club competition villain physiognomy. This is important.
Taylor Lorenz, thanks for joining us. There's this Democratic Creator Incubator program called Chorus,
which is a nonprofit that I helped found to build up a creator ecosystem, which everybody says they want, but few are doing.
and it's funded by this liberal dark money group called the 1630 Fund. So according to your reporting, there are restrictive clauses in the contract. They have to funnel all bookings with lawmakers and political leaders through Chorus.
That's not true. I set up all my own interviews. You can go ask the lawmakers yourself.
Connor, my audience is disproportionately intelligent. Also, my audience is soy and r-slurred. True. Actually, Horse God, it's worse. Okay? Imagine how soy the average Counterpoints viewer is. Now realize that in the soy distribution, there are like quintuple as soy people in the world. Okay? So let's say the COG audience is actually like a decent capture of center left, center right. As soy as my audience is, there are probably a quarter of the population is twice as soy as my audience. That's crazy.
You can't support or oppose politicians without Chorus's approval.
Hello, I am a leftist that is known for being very critical of the Democratic Party, and I'm a member of a training program called Chorus.
And by the way, the program works. In just 2 months, our cohort has added a combined 6 million followers. That's not including me. Lorenz says that the 1630 Fund is, quote, a powerful liberal dark money group. 1630 Fund is our fiscal sponsor. One of the largest documented donors to 1630 Fund is the same person funding Meteor's Reporters in Residence program, which Taylor Lorenz herself is a part of.
From there we
All right. So my sorry, it's just like, you understand right wingers don't do this at all. They don't give a shit. They're like, hey, Ben Shapiro was funded by a bunch of oil companies and tech billionaires. And the right wing goes, cool. Like, listen, man, I get it. The lefties, the economic populists, they think the only reason why their messaging is unpopular is because of the remnants of Cold War propaganda, and also like liberals stealing the spotlight through information warfare, psyops, and social media campaigns. I understand that. But you also considered that you guys might just be like off-putting smug douchebags who are known for cannibalizing each other at the drop of a hat? You know, have you ever thought about that? Because it could be that the right wing hates you because of the Cold War, and it could be because like the center left hates you because you're annoying. But you could ask the question of like, are you annoying as fuck, and is that why everybody hates you? And do you do apologia for some of the worst regimes in the 20th century? And if the answer is yes, I'm annoying as fuck, and I do apologia for some of the worst authoritarian regimes of the 20th century, then maybe you should be like, oh shit, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm a douchebag. You know what I'm saying? From the Ashes for Five says, how much does it cost for me to be the first Golden Cog recipient? I would have to add up like grassroots hedge funds donations and get back to you. But realistically, like if you guys wanted to do, I know I always say like, we're going to do merch, we're going to do merch, we're going to do merch. But realistically, we should do like a flaming cog merch. I don't know. Let me think about it.
Get to the roundtable Trump held about Antifa being terrorists.
Oh, I think Antifa's bad. Oh, I think Antifa's the worst. Oh, I think Antifa molested my grandma.
Then he goes on to Trump saying he would only cut Democrat programs during
That's a great soundbite, by the way.
the government shutdown that I really hope is over by the time this video goes up. Kyle does a good job going over this.
We'll be making cuts that will be permanent, and we're only going to cut Democrat programs. Just so you know, that's not a thing. There is no thing that's like a Democrat program or a Republican program. If Trump gets his way, and if the Republicans get their way, healthcare premiums are going to skyrocket, but they know they can't win on the merits, so they just lie.
And ain't that the main thesis of the Republican Party? And now we're up to the $20 billion Argentina bailout.
I took one look at Javier Milei the first time I saw him, and I said, that guy's a fucking idiot.
Come on, Kyle. What about this guy screams untrustworthy to you? Now we get to Epstein didn't kill himself. Joy.
Who would have been able to order that the FBI should sort of move on from this quickly and brush it under the rug?
Fun fact, Nixon didn't get in trouble for Watergate itself. He got in trouble for the cover-up. The more you try to paper over a crime, the more you make it apparent what the crime actually is. You can take what I'm saying with a grain of salt, but the reason you should be comfortable settling on the idea that Epstein really did kill himself is that the main evidence of the cover-up is a bunch of incredibly vague information that does not actually connect any dots beyond confirmation bias.
Okay, this is... Oh, God, I'm right between Conduit and Kyle Kulinski. This is very frustrating. I feel like the cover-up right now is in, like, full swing. I feel like the cover-up for the Epstein files is in full swing right now. So why doesn't this logic follow through to we should be yanking on threads right now? So, for instance, so I'm sorry for articulating this. I do think that... Okay, hold on. Let me back up and try to articulate it real quick. Jeffrey Epstein dated Ghislaine Maxwell. Ghislaine Maxwell is the daughter of Robert Maxwell. Robert Maxwell was a billionaire Ponzi scheme triple agent for Russia, the UK, and Israel. When Robert Maxwell died at his funeral, they said, "Oh, people aren't even going to know what this guy did for this country or whatever," which kind of to me like implies that he was doing honeypots back in like the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Robert Maxwell. And then it does seem like Jeffrey Epstein, relatively speaking, came out of nowhere. He was like a professor and a school teacher for a little bit. Then he got into finance and he made, tens of millions of dollars and then billions of dollars. And then he used those billions of dollars in order to be the world's most prolific ephebophile. Okay. He allegedly was like flying in teenage prostitutes from France as young as like 13 or 14. And he was routinely poaching high school girls in Palm Beach, Florida, who had bad relationships with their parents to become massage therapists and then prostitutes. And then he would pimp these prostitutes out to really powerful people, including allegedly Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, the former prime minister of Israel. And then according to Virginia Giuffre, the gal who was pimped out to Prince Andrew, another 20 to 30 people really powerful people these teenage girls were pimped out to, probably for leverage and partying and blackmail and this and that. And so, the whole thing where the Epstein Transparency Act says you need to drop 99% of this by Friday with minimal redactions. We're now like, I don't know what, like 2 months into it, and we're still getting it like drip fed. It kind of tells me that like we're just looking at the tip of the iceberg, because what's going to happen is we might not get any convictions out of it, but we're going to get a ton of insinuations. And so those insinuations are going to point to wildly powerful people having sex with teenage prostitutes, compromat being generated, and then said compromat leading to people giving Jeffrey Epstein and maybe Israeli intelligence favorable deals. Okay. I'm not saying they're like actually sacrificing children and drinking their blood for the adrenochrome. I don't think it got that far, but there's probably a lot of powerful people who had sex with teenage prostitutes, AKA raped minors. That would be my best. That would be my bet. Good Grief Rafe says, Bill Chad Clinton says, release that shit, legend. Yeah, but I think that's just because he wants to burn the fucking house down. I think that's because Bill Clinton probably knows that whatever photos or videos exist of him, there's probably shit that's just as bad as Donald Trump. And Bill Clinton's pretty much fucking dead anyways. And he, let's be real. I don't know. I'm not going to go that far. I'm not going to go that far. But Bill Clinton probably wants to burn the fucking house down because he's like, fuck it. I'm going to die anyways. My reputation's already ruined by the mere implications that have already happened. I know fucking Donald Trump's 10 times more guilty than I am. Let's burn this motherfucker to the ground. That's what I think happened with that. Grassroots 20 says, if you count up my total donations, I beg you, please do not tell me what the number is. I won't. AKA Batu Sai says, Connor, what Lego vehicle would you like a figure of yourself in? An ARC 170 Starfighter. Do you understand how good the lore for the ARC 170 Starfighter is? That's the X-Wing from Return of the Sith. Revenge of the Sith. Do you understand how fucking good the lore for that shit is? I hate it. I hate myself. Okay? When I saw Revenge of the Sith 20 years ago, I saw the ARC 170 and I was like, that is so fucking cringe. Matter of fact, let me pull it up. I was like, that is so cringe because all they did is they took an X-Wing and then they made it hardcore. Why didn't they come up with something new for the Grand Army of the Republic to use rather than a modified X-Wing? Okay. And then what ended up happening was I read the lore of the ARC 170 and the lore was fucking amazing. So if you look at the Clone Wars, what happened was it was consistent throughout the entirety of the Clone War. The Separatist army invested in quantity over quality. There was a few exceptions to that. The B-2 battle droids, the droidecas, the tri-wing droid starfighters, the assassin droids, they would invest in quality randomly, but of course, like the vast bulk of their forces were like mass-produced dog shit. That was like bare, like a clone could. The clone was the equivalent of like 20 droids because the droids were just like built shitty because quantity was its own quality. Whereas the Republic invested in quality. And so the ARC 170 is a 3-man long-range patrol fighter. That's what it is. This thing wasn't designed just for dogfighting, although it was really good at dogfighting. It was designed to be in as many places as possible at one time with a hyperspace jump wing. It has a hyperspace drive so it can jump. It has a 3-man patrol craft, and you have enough consumables inside the craft in order to go for 3 or 4 day patrols. So the whole point of an ARC 170 is to go out maybe with like 1 ship or 2 ships, cover as many systems as possible, do reconnaissance, get into a gunfight with something way more powerful than you, have enough guns to fight your way out of being discovered, return to base, and then come back with a fuckload more forces in order to go fuck up some separatists. Sorry for all the F-bombs, but I legitimately get excited by the ARC 170. I actually think that this, not only is it an X-Wing on steroids, the lore behind it makes sense and is cool. So you asked a nerdy question. I gave you a nerdy answer. I hope you appreciate it. Hedonic Samuel for 10 says, I'm conflicted on Kyle. He's soy and Israel obsessed, but he did do that bean tweet. Yeah. He also did Ninjas is Hungry. For those of you who don't know, in like 2010, it's very clear that Kyle Kulinski was just like stoner posting randomly. And so he definitely got baked. And then he just said N-word with the A. He's like, Ninjas is hungry. Hungry. And he spelled hungry, if I remember correctly. It was spelled Houngry. Once again, I would party with Kyle Kulinski, but I would also call him a douchebag the entire time.
Figure these things out because of the way people attempt to direct attention elsewhere. The fact that nothing of this kind has happened with Epstein should tell you something about the circumstances, which is that they didn't need to be manipulated.
It looks like Trump fucking killed Epstein.
Well, let me know if there's any change in his condition. He's dead.
And by the way, Trump ordered, hey, take my name out of it everywhere you find it.
See? Cover-up is much more obvious. And lastly, Kyle has something to say to Asmongold for his comments about ICE using live ammunition on protesters.
Hey, listen, Asmongold, I hope you're watching this. I need you to do me a favor and shut the fuck up from now until forever.
Now, let's see what Krystal's up to.
How you doing? Israel.
Oh, for fuck's sake. I am so tempted to just skip every section on Israel this time because it's all the same points I keep going over. But the way Israel is covered keeps bleeding into every other story. Criticize Trump for being a corrupt fascist, but he's better than Biden for getting a ceasefire.
Airborne Kite says, what's the strongest evidence of the blackmail operation? Just as apparent impunity? Yes. Yes.
The ceasefire isn't real because Trump is paid off by Zionist billionaires to let Israel get away with genocide. Democrats aren't opposing Trump enough because they're paid by AIPAC. Trump wants to invade Venezuela, and the opposition leader asked Netanyahu for support in the UN. It wasn't...
Good Grief Griff says, not in the shotgun seat of a Warthog sporting the original assault rifle. Okay, well, I'm going to do that in real life. All right. If I'm going to be a Lego set, I'll be a pilot in an ARC 170. If I'm going to, and by the way, like I would be like a rebel. So number one, I would probably be Empire. Let's be real. I would be Empire. But you know that like weird transition period where they're moving from clones to normal soldiers. I would love to be a human, normal ARC 170 pilot that got trained by clones. That then during the Imperial period, I either continued as an imp and kind of became like a new starfighter pilot in the Imperial Navy, or joined the rebellion but took my ARC 170 with me. That's the story that I would write for myself. Fellrunner says, Connor, Dana was taking earlier about us kidnapping oil tanker captain out of UK waters. Cool. Honestly, I think targeting and capturing the Shadow Fleet is one of the most base fucking things that we've ever done as a country. I'm actually perfectly okay with that. So...
like this 2 years ago, right? I'm not crazy that there wasn't a murder board of connections to Israel for every goddamn thing that happens. How did we get here?
I think in the last 24 hours, at least 17 Palestinians were killed, but they also are fighting.
That's not really
more.
my understanding of a ceasefire.
Well, that is the understanding that the Israeli government usually brings to a ceasefire.
Same as it ever was.
There's been a siege on. Yet, when Israelis have seen previous captives released, they've said, how dare you? How could you treat the hostages this way? Palestinians look around at they're like, this is what we look like too. Like, what are you talking about?
You don't need to downplay one to elevate the other. Israel is still striking targets in Lebanon, and the Gaza ceasefire is incredibly tenuous. And Israel did restrict aid into Gaza for several months. But the outrage about the hostages hasn't just been about starvation, and that outrage doesn't become unjustified because of apparent hypocrisy, especially when the conditions of the hostages had been an issue prior to the aid restrictions.
If the United States actually exerts itself.
All right. Sorry for distracting from the content with Star Wars lore. Targan, so basically what Mandalorian had in the first season, but with wings? No, better. Well, okay, hold on. It's still a starfighter. So I think there's enough room for the people to be able to change positions, like the co-pilot could change positions with the gunner, but it would be tight. There's no storage for bounties. And can I say that a bounty hunter having a Naboo N1 starfighter is dumb as hell? Like, I haven't watched the most recent seasons of the Mandalorian, so maybe it gets a little bit better where he's more of an assassin than he is a bounty hunter. But for a motherfucker who's like making his livelihood off of bounties, he seems to not be bringing in a lot of bounties. You know what I'm saying? I can't remember the last time that like Mando got paid for a job. I think his last paid job was the Imperial job that let him get his armor. So anyways, but an N1 starfighter, it has like the droid cockpit that he's modified for Grogu. But where are you supposed to keep the guys that you're fucking freezing in carbonite? You know what I'm saying? Where's the carbonite shit? The Razor Crest actually had storage for bounties. And not only did it have storage for bounties, it also had like enough room for the carbonite system. So, you know, an N1 starfighter, are you fucking shitting me? Now, if you wanted to get something similar to a Razor Crest, and then you wanted to like tow around your N1 starfighter, that way you could park the Razor Crest and then go into a fucking space battle with an N1 starfighter, that would be dope. Or if you had a base of operations where you had a transport ship like Slave One, where you had a transport ship like Slave One, which is also a patrol vehicle. Believe it or not, Slave One, Boba Fett's vehicle, is actually, it's a cop car. It's a modified cop car, which is one of the funniest lore things that I read. So Slave One is a modified cop car. The N1 starfighter is stupid. Mando needs a drop ship, and he needs a drop ship that he can use for bounties, and he needs a fighter for fights. And having him trying to do both out of a Naboo N1 starfighter is cringe. I might need to go use the restroom in a second. Thoughts on the Halo TV show? The props are amazing. The plot sucks.
That's how those wars end. An American president calls up and says, that's it. I'm yanking the leash.
A list of every major Israeli conflict and whether the United States put an end to it.
To get the hostages back and then go in and saying that they're doing it because they need to disarm Hamas, which again, a lot of their weapons are unexploded ordnance. I don't quite see how they physically, literally can disarm. If they'll...
Sorry, real quick. Andor, I haven't watched yet because I'm going to be breaking it down for the Counterpoint Star Wars series, and I don't want to ruin it for myself until I'm watching it with a breakdown attitude.
Those are the weapons we're talking about.
This is a misrepresentation of Hamas's weaponry at best, that's basically intended to evoke the extent of Gazan destruction as the enormity of the task of disarming.
Yeah. All right, I'm so sorry for interrupting and totally fucking up the flow of the content, but this is actually really funny. Targun says, yeah, he got a kid, and instead of a minivan, he got a speeder bike. Dude, that is so true. Targun, I know that I soyed out at you because you said something about like Vietnamese history, and then I freaked out on you because I was like, your understanding of the Vietnam War sucks ass and it's totally Eurocucked. But you just said one of the most true statements on the planet. Imagine that you're a bounty hunter, okay? And you have an SUV that is capable of carrying all your gear, transporting prisoners. You know, you can keep your weapons in there. You have endless storage. When you got to ride without other bounty hunters, you got like, you know, transport capacity for other people to ride shotgun. And then you get a kid. So your solution is to trade in your sports utility vehicle, which I know it was blown up, but you could have bought a new one, right? Instead of buying another SUV or custom making a van that's good for your kid and good for bounty hunting, imagine the A-Team van from the 1980s. Instead, you buy a motorcycle and you put like a basket on the front of the motorcycle. That way, if you get into a 200-mile-an-hour accident, your kid gets smushed to death in the accident. How fucking stupid is that? That just tells me that the people who are writing Mandalorian are doing the member berries where they're like, do you remember this cool thing? Do you remember this cool thing? Like they're not writing the show or thinking about the tools in reference to what contextually makes sense based off of the lore in Star Wars. They're writing it based off of like, hey, do you remember this cool thing? You know, fucking sucks.
Israeli ambassador to America talking about going back into Gaza after the hostages are returned. I've got no problem with them calling him a right-wing nut job, but
that guy that we were just listening to, the Israeli ambassador to the U.S., seemed to have American.
Grassroots 10 says best music in Star Wars, period, and then a link. I'm not going to click on it for now, but I need to use the restroom. I will be right back.
Accent. He is indeed from Scranton, Pennsylvania.
While that is true, I am wary of the way they just pointed that out. One prejudice you hear against Israelis a lot is that they aren't actually from the region and they should go back to their own country. Now we learn that Israel reused 3D imagery to gin up models of Hamas tunnels and infrastructure.
Of course, everyone remembers the famous 3D rendering of the Al-Shifa hospital.
If you remember that, you're weird. Maybe I'm an idiot, but I don't see why that in itself is a problem. The idea that they would both make bespoke models for each location and that they would broadcast the specific layout seems like it'd be an intelligence breach. But Krystal is making it out to be that this proves they were total fabrications.
They just pulled that and repurposed it to be like, no, actually the Hamas lair is under the hospital now.
Some of the locations were known for months, if not years prior to the war, to be used by Hamas.
Even for us, people who have been very skeptical, to say the least, of Israeli government claims and, very attuned to the amount of Hasbara and the amount of, money that's spent to pay influencers and all of that that's been revealed.
I'm not saying that every attack was therefore correct and ethical and moral. It's just that from my standpoint, this in itself doesn't bring the legitimacy of these targets into dispute. And we're back to Venezuela and Maria Corina Machado winning the Nobel Prize. Ryan also misrepresents how she asked Netanyahu for help with Maduro.
She has even asked Benjamin Netanyahu to please come liberate Venezuela.
I can't prove it, but Ryan seems very upset that Emily decided to point out the most likely reason Machado won the Nobel Prize.
Imagine one of the reasons she got this is because there's a pretty decent case that she actually won.
Yes, it does. It does appear like Maduro rigged that election. So maybe that's, but
they also did. They were able to track because of the system. Actually, yeah.
Then we're on to ICE raids.
It genuinely is like a mass terror campaign to scare people into either leaving or to chill dissent.
That is correct.
I hate these people so much.
Agreed. Then the Republican who bought Dominion voting.
So that's a little ominous. Got to look into that more to find out what that means.
And that's day one. It wasn't great, but it was still better than I expected, actually.
Let me just say, it's not that I'm calling him a Nazi. It's that he has said he has admiration for Adolf Hitler. Every now and then, Nick Fuentes will come out there and he'll say something that seems true on, for example, the issue of the genocide in Gaza. There is such a thing as being right for the wrong reason.
The Likud regime in Israel has captured our government. They're responsible for the censorship. They're responsible for the war in Iraq. America is the seat of the liberal empire that controls the world.
So he's at it, not me. He actually doesn't really care about Palestinians. He doesn't really care about the genocide. I actually want the liberal order and international law to matter. I'm taking it for moral reasons. I'm taking this position. He's taking it for strategic reasons. It's a chicken shit position to say, I don't actually care about the genocide. And by the way, the reason why I low-key like the role he plays is because he functions as somebody who divides and conquers the right. He makes a stink on the right, and he starts throwing Molotov cocktails at largely his ideological allies, and then they start infighting with each other, and then the movement falls apart. May as well be a CIA op on the right to divide and conquer the right, and that's why I love it. Because then you collapse under your own weight. And as you all know, the Democrats are fucking useless. They don't know how to fight, so you need the right-wingers to take down other right-wingers in order to block the agenda.
Okay, hopefully today doesn't start off too bad.
First, the open admission of how corrupt the Israel lobby is and how they buy all of our politicians.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Miriam Adelson is a billionaire, and Miriam gave $100 million to Trump. And the quid pro quo was basically, you need to be a cuck to Israel.
My criticism here isn't that someone has undue influence on the president towards Israel. I don't dispute that. My issue is that the framing Kyle uses here in an effort to be bombastic is basically implying that Israel controls the government.
Bragging about him doing the bidding of that pro-Israel billionaire and the Israeli government. He's making the case about how the Israel lobby needs to register as a foreign agent. Right now, AIPAC doesn't register as a foreign agent. Well, here we know pro-Israel donors in the U.S., billionaires with dual citizenship, clearly they're repping Israel. They're backing Israel.
Cool. Do a loyalty trope. Miriam Adelson is not broad justification for labeling a group as a foreign agent.
They're not the America first, my ass cheeks. This is America last. This is Israel first.
And of course, the Democrats aren't doing enough about this.
It sure would be nice to have an opposition party in this country that could call this out and slam him for it. No, instead what will happen is the Democrats will keep quiet and try to suck up to the same Israeli billionaires, hoping that they'll pick them. How are you going to out-corrupt Donald Trump?
The Likud regime in Israel has captured.
Yeah. So what I would say is that Kyle Kulinski wants a Labor Party. So this is the way that I understand it. And maybe our Brit bongers or somebody familiar with British politics could, kind of tell me about it. I don't even know if there's a Liberal Party or if they call it something else. But I do know that Labor could be totally wrong, but this is based off my perception. Labor in the UK does have socialists in it, but it also has social democrats in it, and it's generally thought of as a progressive party. I think a lot of progressive Labor voters right now feel betrayed because they're not as woke as they used to be. Apparently, they're not as woke on trans stuff. They're not as woke on DEI representation bullshit. But they're still very economically redistributivist. They're still very economically populist. And so Labor is known for being, either social democrat or socialist or democratic socialist. And it's kind of like a coalition of leftists and progressives. Whereas I know the Conservative Party is just going to be conservative. I think like UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, I think that's what they're called. UKIP and the Brexit movement, I know they're considered far right. And then I don't know if there's a center-left liberal party. I know there's like a center-left liberal party in Canada, but I don't know if they call themselves the Liberals. But I do know that not Blair White, Tony Blair. Was Tony Blair a conservative or was he a liberal? Because I feel like there was like I felt like Tony Blair in an American context is center left. I don't think he was Labor. As a matter of fact, I know he wasn't Labor because he was still beefing with Jeremy Corbyn back then. But I think a lot of people in Europe think of him as center right because he was friends with George W. Bush and he helped push the UK into the Iraq war conflict, backing up the United States. So if somebody wants to throw me some insight into British politics, I would welcome the insight, but that's my exterior impression. So I think that Kyle Kulinski wants a American Labor Party, a union of progressives, leftists, and social democrats to outflank the Democratic Party from a left wing that's economically populist and probably more progressive than the current Democratic establishment. Anonymous chatter with the 20. Derail number 462. What faction would the COG be in Warhammer 40K? Are there any overachieving factions of rich pile people being whipped for their leaders for their lack of morals? 100%. So I think we would be an Imperial Guard regiment from an Imperial pleasure world. So there's such things as pleasure worlds that are unspoiled combinations of nature and civilization that are built solely for their aesthetic and spiritual pleasure. And imperial nobles can either live there or travel there in order to have unbridled sex and Dionysian wine-fueled orgies. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that correlates, not causates, because obviously the Imperium tolerates it, but that correlates with like Slaneshi corruption, the god of excess. It correlates with Slaneshi corruption, and it also is an easy place for Gene Stealer cult to infiltrate because Gene Stealer cult also spread through sex. So you have to be like really, really, really careful on a pleasure planet. So I would say the conservatives and the conservatarians are the Imperial Guard, whereas the gooners, the gooners in my chat are either Imperial nobles if they're rich, or they're geishas. They're like sex slaves, but they're like voluntary sex slaves on an Imperial pleasure planet. That would be my. Did I ever tell you about Ahsoka Tano? Let's not do that meme. Illidan, I think Illidan or Leiden became a member. Thank you. All right, let's keep going.
Our government.
Trump was protested while giving a speech in the Knesset.
Now, I got to be honest, I don't know what this protest was. It's very possible it could be the Ben Gvir or Smotrich.
Tony Blair was liberal for real? Wow. Labor's changed a lot.
Types, the super far right.
Okay, feel like you should know. It was the Israeli left. They explicitly called him out for aiding the genocide in Gaza.
If it hasn't hit you yet, it's at this point it should hit you that both Israel and the U.S. are going to go down in history like Nazi Germany.
Until such a time that the United States...
Oh, go fuck yourself, Kyle. Also, Republic Commando based.
...becomes fully and permanently incapable of providing the world with humanitarian and diplomatic aid, as well as safe pathways for trade. I don't think that's true. What's happening in Gaza is, to put it mildly, fucking atrocious. Trump is enabling it. To say that doesn't contradict either idea that the people in Gaza need a government that supports them instead of using them as a meat shield, and that America's culpability in that does not outweigh the literal millions of people it has kept alive with food, clean water, and medicine. Part of what I think is necessary to fixing the problems we're currently having is to actually feel like America is worth fighting for, and condemning us to the dustbin of history serves only to validate its destruction.
Literally right up there with the evil guy with the freaky mustache. He knows how to...
Yeah, this is why I would happily get blitzed with Kyle Kulinski, but I'd be yelling at him the entire time. This is very R-slurred.
Use those weapons. He sure does. He aims it right at those toddlers and goes, pew, pew. That's what he does. So the only good news that's come out is the 20 Israeli hostages released, but the 2,000 Palestinian hostages being released. By the way, they said you're not allowed to record their reactions.
The problem is that you need to disentangle actual issues with Israeli detainment from the Hamas propaganda that would obviously be created the same way they created propaganda for the hostage releases that were spread by people who should have known better.
Hamas. Dana says, in Canada, conservative is right-wing, liberal is center and progressive. NDP, the New Democratic Party, is soy left, but they often vote with lib because the two choices gauge the outcome of the electorate. Okay, that's cool. That actually, Dana, thank you for that. That does make a lot of sense to me.
This is giving them drugs, and that's why they're dabbing them up. Hamas gave them the drugs that make you dab up Hamas.
Thankfully, we're off Gaza. Kyle has a good idea to have lawyers at ICE protests documenting and explaining what's happening in real time.
There should be a lawyer at every single one of these protests with a megaphone. We need that professionalism. We need that energy. We need that understanding of the law. Is the U.S. sending troops to Israel?
But we just left.
Trump just illegally sent U.S. troops to Israel.
It's not illegal for Trump to send non-combatant members of the military to Israel, and nowhere in the article he's looking at here does it actually say it is. Nor does it say anything about the legality of this operation in reporting from BBC, NPR, or PBS. By all accounts, he does not, as Kyle says here, need to go through Congress.
You would need to go through Congress in order to do that.
But it creates a new opportunity for Kyle to say that Dems aren't doing enough.
It's not like Democrats are actually acting as a sufficient opposition party, so they're not fucking talking about this. By the way, I like what Wajahat Ali says here.
Oh my God, he's reading a Twitter quote in the article. It's inescapable at this point.
You're going to get a peep in mainstream media, but more importantly, you're barely going to get a peep out of the so-called opposition party, the Democrats. And that is incredibly disturbing and incredibly disgusting.
In the next segment, Kyle talks about Joe Rogan seeming like he regrets his rightward shift given the level of violence being acted by ICE. And it's like, you remember the kids in cages from the first term, right? Some of them might never actually be reunited with their parents because they didn't do it.
Jonas says, I'm kind of done sweeping for Israel, not going to lie. They've been doing too much shit. It's pissing me off. Dude, you don't have to, man. You don't have to. This is why I've always said, like, I'm a tepid Zionist. You know what tepid Zionism in my definition is? Is that Israel doesn't deserve to be blasted off of the face of the map. Okay? From the river to the sea, I don't think that Palestine needs to be completely free. Okay? Palestine can be free in the Gaza with current borders. They can build a sweet-ass highway. They can call it apartheid highway if they want. I don't care. Build a sweet-ass highway to the West Bank. We should draw new borders. We should do like a multi-billion-dollar investment deal. We should do the Marshall Plan for Gaza and the West Bank. And Muslims and Jews should just share Jerusalem. Okay? It is the way that it is. I know that what's happening is Al-Aqsa is a holy site to the Muslims that they're not going to want to give up. I know that Israel is not going to want to give up Jerusalem. And technically, they were there first from a historical perspective. But they need to understand that the fucking Muslims have been there for several centuries. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think Israel should be obliterated off of the face of the planet. I think what they're doing in Gaza is fucked up. I think them slowly annexing the West Bank is fucked up. But I'm also not going to help Arab Muslim Palestinians, destroy the government of Israel and then render Israelis second-class citizens and or get massacred. I'm just not going to do it. So that the slow annexation of the West Bank and Gaza is definitely fucked up, but I'm not doing it. Israel can fucking suffer its own consequences for doing that shit. That's not for me. All I'm saying is I got plenty of Jewish members. I understand why they identify with the state of Israel. I understand why Israelis are paranoid and anxious and think their neighbors are trying to kill them. It's because they have tried to kill them half a dozen times over the course of the past history. I don't think that justifies ethnic cleansing in Gaza or West Bank. And if I was dictator, I would invade all of Israel-Palestine and I would force a two-state solution. But I'm not dictator of America. I'm not dictator of the world. So fuck it. Like, people don't deserve to be massacred straight up. Brave take. I know. Zerenthius agrees that it's brave. Thank you, Zerenthius. I appreciate your appreciation of my brave take. Oh my God. Anyways, just reading a few chats before we keep it moving. Israel thing is suffocating. I want our politics to be about us. Israel doesn't deserve to be blasted off the map, nor do states have rights. People do. Now let's make American politics about us. I'm not as isolationist as you, but that's because I love geopolitical bullshit. Good Grief Griff says, you don't have to sweep for Israel. Just don't delude yourself into thinking that they are the root of every evil thing in the world. It's not that complicated. I'm with you. So a conservative liberalism follows up and says, if America keeps throwing billions into that part of the world, I want a bouncy house and McDonald's ball pit on the Temple Mount and nothing else. Okay. But you do understand that it's like $4 billion to Israel, $3 billion to Egypt, $3 billion to Jordan in order to keep that area stabilized. So it's $10 billion a year, which is the equivalent of like 0.8% of the federal budget. And if that actually stabilizes that region of the world to the point that we don't have to worry about people getting smoked in a horrible way, then honestly, that's money well spent. You know what I'm saying? $10 billion for peace in the Middle East is a perfectly sane amount of money.
Anything to keep track of them.
He made his bed, and now he's going to sleep in it. You rode the wave, and you rode the vibes. It wasn't about policy. It was never about policy, and that's obvious.
Israeli troops, in their withdrawal from Gaza, destroyed a bunch of stuff, including a sewage treatment plant.
Without a doubt, is an attempt to continue to make Gaza completely and utterly unlivable, so they have to leave, so Israel can steal all of the territory.
No idea if there's some justifiable context surrounding it, given the pictures they took. I'm more inclined to think that there isn't any. This was a stupid and egregious action, not just because there are now no operational sewage treatment plants in Gaza, but now the sewage that will most likely get dumped into the Mediterranean will just end up contaminating Israeli beaches. And I unfortunately have to give Rangrim credit for having pointed that out later in the week. I hope Israel actually punishes these soldiers for the additional suffering they've now caused, but I'm not going to hold my breath.
This is the reality of what Palestinians are returning to. I have a fucking bridge to sell you if you're dumb enough to think, oh, this was defensive and they were only going after Hamas. If you actually believe that, you might be the dumbest person on the planet. Because there's about...
I agree with Kyle here. I think that blowing up 80% of buildings was punitive. We've gone over this before. I even have a drawing about it. Turning the other cheek is based, and whenever you can do it, you should do it. If somebody offends you, if somebody strikes your cheek, you should offer them the other one in the hope that you being non-vengeful is a basis for you to build reciprocity going forward. However, if that's not possible, tit for tat is another good moral system where you don't have to do anything illegal. You don't have to kill anyone. But if somebody does something terrible against you, then you can reciprocate against them in a proportional way that should let them know that there's consequences to their actions. After that, there's eye for an eye, which is probably not great, but it's a better moral system than pagan. What did I call it? I called it like pagan retributive violence. Eye for an eye means that if you poke out my eye, then I'm entitled to poke out your eye, or we can agree on a compensation that is proportional to my eye. And so it's proportional reciprocity, but it's also negative reciprocity. So if you do something fucked up to me, I can do something fucked up to you that's proportional, and or I can be compensated in order to buy out my shit. Now, barbarian retributive violence is you kill a member of my tribe, and I come over and I slaughter every man in your tribe. I enslave all your women and children, and I erase your civilization from the face of the planet. Okay? And I think that we can agree that 1,500 random slaughtered Israeli people. I think it was like 1,200 total. 300 of them were IDF. I don't know if they were reservists in civilian clothing or if they were active duty IDF. But 900 civilians getting butchered for no other crime than being Israeli is horrific, barbaric violence. But I think we can also agree that wiping out 70,000 people, 20,000 of whom were combatants, 50,000 of whom weren't, causing 200,000 indirect deaths, and then blowing up 80% of the buildings. To me, I'm just going to say it, like between the four moral systems that I just described for you, that sounds like barbarian retributive violence. Like, you fucked on me, you killed 1,000 of my people. Okay, I just wiped out 70,000 of your people without blinking an eye, and 80% of your buildings were blown up, and you don't have septic, and you don't have reliable water, and you don't have reliable food. Fuck you. That sounds like barbarian retributive violence to me. Dana Calico Klaus is backing away slowly from that conversation in the context. We are doing chill, so I need to keep my blood pressure stable. By the way, anyone eating McDonald's needs to switch to real food and cleanse of ground grizzle grease. True. You need to eat food that cleanses your blood system of atherosclerosis. Greens, vegetables, fish, omega-3s, omega-6 fatty acids, all that stuff. It helps get rid of the plaque that's in your arteries, so it increases the time that you're going to live. So, yeah, absolutely. Eat a diet that reverses atherosclerosis so you don't die of your McDonald's consumption. True. Let's keep it rolling. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. We're at a 6 out of 10 on the goal. We got 4 super chats left. Probably around 12 to 12:15. I'm going to stop this video and I'm going to move into a video that somebody suggested. I forget who it is. I'm sorry that I forget who it is right now. I'm sure I could check my Discord and figure it out, but it's the This is Water video. It's like a philosophy video. We've been talking about watching it for a while. So I want to watch that before we move into Valor Reacts. So, all right. What else you got for us, Kyle?
Now, 30,000 Hamas members, and there were over 2 million people in Gaza, but somehow you blew up 80 to 90% of all of the buildings in Gaza, and we're supposed to believe this was super targeted and defensive against Hamas.
30,000 people with guns and the ability to force other people to work with those guns and 2 decades to operate are actually extremely capable of outfitting the majority of buildings in Gaza with traps and supplies that would need to be destroyed. They have talked about this. This isn't a conspiracy. The intention of Hamas was to draw Israel into Gaza, get them to destroy everything, and turn the world against Israel so that they can force everyone there to leave if they can't just kill them. You might think that's crazy, and you'd be correct. The leaders of Hamas are religious authoritarian extremists. They are crazy. That doesn't absolve Israel of actually doing it, but it also means that Hamas played an active role in its destruction as well, and the people who suffer for it are the Palestinian civilians who could just as easily set off the booby traps left for IDF soldiers if they aren't dealt with.
Let's also say this. If anybody is celebrating at this moment, when this is what has already happened to Gaza, that takes a special kind of sickness.
Yes,
Okay, I'm going to celebrate that you said it was the Holocaust, which was 6 million dead people. I'm celebrating the fact that 2 million people aren't fucking slaughtered off of the face of the planet. So if they're returning to a blown up, blown to shit fucking rubble pile, but they can continue to survive and they can rebuild said rubble pile, that's better than 6 million people getting wiped off of the face of the planet. Anonymous Chatter says, I need my handsome Uncle Dan content. Make it happen, Pookie. What does that mean? Oh, Dan, my Dan Pace. Absolutely. So just to remind people in case they're not used to what we normally do, every now and then we do Valor Reacts. So YouTube has this thing where it auto catches copyright content and flags it down. So what we do is we go to just Twitch. So Counterpoints Politics or Counterpoints on Twitch. So if you haven't used Twitch before, go to twitch.com or twitch.tv, type in Counterpoints. There should be like a blue and gold logo with my symbol on it. And you can follow that there. And then what we're doing is we were breaking down Black Hawk Down. We're probably about 70 to 80% of the way through the film. So I still think it's going to take us like another 2 to 3 weeks in order to fully finish Black Hawk Down. But we're basically, Dan Pace, who was a Special Forces veteran, and we're watching Black Hawk Down together. We're pausing it every, let's be real, like every 10 seconds. But we try to let the content flow a little bit. And we basically pause it like every couple of minutes and make commentary on what's happening. Like what's happening tactically, what's happening with the technology, what's happening psychologically, what's happening physiologically, what do I know about all these tactics, and what happened, or all the tactics that Dan Pace knows about as a former Special Forces guy. And it's a good time, man. It's a good time. So it's not as popular as it should be as far as content goes, but that's another thing that I'm going to want to grow going forward, especially with a new back-end team. I'm going to want to grow that. So basically in about an hour, we're going to be moving into that content.
We'll celebrate that these people are not dead. From Gaza, we go up to Lebanon for the Israeli strikes occurring there.
A journalist was on the ground in these towns where residents are attempting to return to their towns amid constant drone attacks. So it's not really a ceasefire. It's you cease and we fire.
Once again, this kind of reporting omits that Hezbollah, the group that has been ordered by the UN and the actual government of Lebanon to disarm, but still refuses to, will violently come down on anyone who does not toe the line on their narrative about Israel. Before even getting into the substance, the first reply to Ryan's tweet that Kyle's looking at is not great. Kyle says Israel is collaborating with ISIS-affiliated gangs in Gaza to steal aid and continue fighting Hamas so they can abide the ceasefire.
Literally, ISIS-affiliated gangs. I'm not kidding. ISIS-affiliated gangs.
Almost. Israel is arming groups in Gaza, and they all have their own individual issues with extremism and criminality, even as they're opposed to Hamas. Netanyahu has admitted to doing it and has been called out for it, given that it is reminiscent of their last strategy to keep the Palestinians divided. But the ISIS affiliation is tenuous at best. One group, led by Yasser Abu Shabab, is claimed to have ISIS connections, while Shabab was a narcotic smuggler. But I have not been able to verify them, and have seen nothing to indicate that those ties would still be active. But more importantly, I haven't been able to find anything tying any other groups to ISIS. From what I can tell, this claim emerged from an Israeli minister vaguely mentioning ISIS connections when revealing that Netanyahu was arming the gangs to the press. This is why you don't use Twitter as a source.
So yet again, I'm correct. Aid is on the way. Bon appetit. And it's literally a missile.
That is gross. Then he talks about Bill Burr performing at a comedy show in Riyadh.
You know, doing a little jig for them, doing some little tap dance for them. You like this, Massa? That's you feel comfortable?
No, now I feel really uncomfortable, actually.
Damn. You know, him being like a spicy meatball like that, I'm not going to lie. It's pretty spicy, but I like that kind of humor because it's like early thousands racialized humor. And he's also not like disparaging black people while doing that. He's disparaging Bill Burr for being willing to sell out his narrative, like sell out his principles in order to, you know, perform in Riyadh. Now, for me, like I'm of two minds on this thing. So just in case, let's zoom out a little bit. In reference to Saudi Arabia, the previous king who died in the past 5-10 years, I don't know. I don't remember his name. But that guy was a conservative. And he was known for, while the war on terror was going on, he was sponsoring a bunch of conservative madrasas. And they were called Wahhabists. And so he was trying to reinforce conservative Sunni Islam. And the reason why the United States was uncomfortable with this is because it's actually not that far of a jump from Wahhabist interpretations of Islam to Islamist and jihadist terrorism. But that was something that the old king was into. And also, like, Saudi Arabia, I don't envy the Saudi monarchy at all, because they have, as the people who take care of Muslim holy sites, because Mecca and Medina are in the kingdom of Saudi Arabia, they have to be conservative enough not to get killed by jihadists and Islamist terrorists, but they have to be modernist enough in order to participate in the modern world, including an alliance with the United States. And so that's a tightrope act. And with the new king, the young king, he is more of a modernist. So he's the one that like loosened driving laws. He loosened tourism laws. He's tried to be more of an active participant with the United States in reference to, you know, like tourism and normalization of culture and anti-terrorist activity and normalization of relations with the, you know, with Israel and all that kind of stuff. And so in those ways, the new king is a modernist. Now, the problem is that the new king also murdered a journalist at a Turkish embassy. So for those of you who don't remember the story, there was a guy named like Khashoggi, and Khashoggi was a critic of the Saudi regime. And so what they did is they had like a Saudi Arabian hit team meet him at the Turkish embassy. He didn't know he was meeting with Saudi officials. I think he thought he was meeting with Turkish officials. I think the allegation is that they murdered him, chopped up his body, and left the Turkish embassy with his corpse and then disposed of it. And the hit squad was allegedly like ordered by the new king to do it. So while we have this perception of modernism and normalizing relations with Israel, which is going to cause less death in the, you know, in the long term and all that kind of stuff, we also just have like straight up mob style murder of a journalist critical of the Saudi regime. So it's kind of like a difficult thing to perceive. And I don't know what the fuck to do with it. Half the time I'm like, yeah, fuck Saudi Arabia. They're making this shit worse. Oh, it was the Saudi embassy? Oh, okay. All right. I thought it. Oh, okay. It was the Saudi embassy in Turkey. Got you. Okay. What? So they invited him there under false pretenses and then they murdered him and chopped him up? That's interesting. Okay. Okay. I get it. But yeah. So like half the time I'm like, we should be boys with Saudi Arabia so we can make them more modern more quickly. And then the other times I'm like, no. They're just playing us. That way we don't attack them. You know what I'm saying? So I don't fucking know. I don't know, man. I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude playing a dude inside another dude. You know what I'm saying?
Lastly, Kyle goes over the $200 million crypto short, most likely pulled by someone with insider information of Trump's Chinese.
Yes, Jamal Khashoggi. Thank you, Anonymous Chatter, for the chip.
Tariff announcement.
This is what we'd like to call insider trading. But of course, crime is now legal, so they're going to get away with it. Everybody just feels like nothing matters anymore. And so just like it is what it is. And I'm sorry, man, but that's the mindset that brings us.
We're not attacking Saudi for two reasons. Number one, they do buy a lot of our military tech. Number two, they're sitting on a third of the world's oil as well. So the math isn't quite right, but I think that Saudi Arabia is sitting on like almost 200 gigabillion barrels of oil. I think that Iran is actually sitting on a little bit more. I think they're sitting on like 250 gigabillion barrels of oil. And then I think Venezuela is sitting on 300 gigabillion barrels of oil. And those are like the largest proven oil reserves on the planet. So we are boys with Saudi. We're rivals and enemies with Iran and with Venezuela, but it seems like we're trying to check Iran and Venezuela. And ideally, I don't know if Khosra is still here, but ideally what would happen is we would strangle the Venezuelan regime until it topples, and then they normalize their relations with the U.S., at which point Russia and China have even less allies. And then ideally there would be an Iranian revolution, a new Iranian revolution that would actually be like pro-modernist and pro-democratic. And then if there was a modernist democratic Iran, then effectively Russia and China also lose another part of their like BRICS network. I don't know if BRICS is even appropriate for what I'm saying, but because it's like Brazil, Rhodesia. Rhodesia doesn't exist. I don't know what the R in BRICS stands for. Fuck. What are the nations of BRICS? Brazil, Russia. Okay, that makes sense. India, China, and South Africa. Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, UAE, and Indonesia. Okay, together they represent about 50% of the world population, 36% of the territory, 40% of the GDP, and 23% of international trade. Okay. BRICS is actually like a little bit bigger. Rhodesia. Okay, yeah. Definitely not Rhodesia. Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore. Russia. So I think that would be worrying to me that Saudi, Egypt, and UAE would be a part of that. But as long as Saudi, UAE, and Indonesia and Egypt kind of stay boys with us, I guess it's not that big of a deal. I'm worried about it, but I'm worried about it, but I'm not losing sleep over it. I'll put it that way. I'm an ex-China hawk. I know most of the orgs. Okay. Andy B says MBS, which I think is the Young King, is also the reason why Western women can walk around in Saudi Arabia without hijabs and not be criminally liable. It's extremely gray morally. Yes. Just Julia says, do you ever do viewer call-ins? I made a comment yesterday that got blown way out of proportion because I think you misunderstood my overall point. Still like you though. Just Julius, don't worry about it. Like you can 100% call in. If you ever want to do a one-on-one, just DM me on Discord or Twitter. Twitter is Neo Counter Connor, NECOUNTERCONOR. Alternatively, you can just join the Discord. I'll share the Discord link in a second. We could schedule a one-on-one if you ever want to do a debate or a conversation or something. But if I ever freak the fuck out on chat and I'm freaking out on you, don't worry about it, man. I'm just being a douche. Like I love my community, and I'm sad that we're not, like, I can't sufficiently communicate to you the way that I feel about the Renee Good shooting and the Preddy shooting. I can't communicate to you guys the way that I feel about shit in such a way that you're all going to like come onto my side and agree with me. But truth be told, I wouldn't want a sycophantic audience anyways. I think part of the problem, sorry if this is me coping about it, but I do think that part of the problem with our alternative media diet and discourse is that effectively what we have is we have creators who they pick a political tribe. Like, let's say it's Dave Smith with libertarians, or let's say it's Destiny with liberals, or let's say it's, I don't know, Pisco with progressives and liberals, or let's say it's, I don't know, just pick a guy, right? And I think part of the problem is that 99% of the time, or 98% of the time, if you go with what that political tribe wants, then you're going to like blow up as a social media figure, because effectively you're just regurgitating the talking points that group wants to hear in order to build your base and reinforce their worldview and reinforce their interactions with ideologies and shit. You know what I'm saying? Whereas I think what I do, because I actually try to, I know this is a mistake, but I try to say words that represent reality. And then I also just try to like judge what I think is right, regardless of political tribalism. You know what I'm saying? Like if I was just like a tribalist, then I would be a MAGA dick sucker right now. If I was just a contrarian right winger, then I would just steel man the Trump administration, and I would just constantly straw man the left in order to suck up that contrarian right wing audience that Tim Pool and, no offense, Sitch and Adam have. But I have this problem where I just think about things and I just tell you what I think is true, and that's not always going to line up, you know? And you guys aren't always going to like me, and I'm not always going to like you. But I hope that we have an opportunity to build like a better community as a result. You know what I'm saying? So Just Julius says, I'll definitely do that. I didn't take it to heart. It's just that I enjoy a good convo, and I hate it when I misstate something and the point gets lost. Yep, my apologies. I was probably just wrapped up like a motherfucker and probably being a douche nozzle because people were pissing me off. So my apologies if I was a douche nozzle and I misunderstood your statement. Rob says, Connor sent you a DM that replies to the original link to This Is Water I sent you. I made a brief rundown to contextualize what it is. Thank you. Thank you. We'll be moving into that momentarily. All right. Beef says, I'm lying under the blankets listening to Connor be humble. I love you, buddy. Listen, man, Beef, I'm sorry that I fucking scream at you all the time. Same thing with AF Racing was nice enough to drop by yesterday and not be a douche. I don't want to ban AF Racing. I wish we could be boys, but you know, he was being fucking soy the other day, so I fucking killed him. In my rage, I digitally murdered AF Racing, and I feel guilty about it. I don't feel guilty enough to unban him on Counterpoints Politics because he was being a soy bitch. But if he was in the chat and being chill and we were talking about cool ideas and we were bouncing off of each other and all that kind of shit, then I don't give a fuck. You know what I'm saying? Same thing with Lethal Lance. So Rob Goes Slow is Rob with a W. Rob's a boss is Lethal Lance, I think. And Lethal Lance has been like a total smug bitch for the past 2 weeks. And I didn't want to digitally murder him. But in my rage, I killed Lethal Lance and I killed AF Racing. Oh. Dana says, most of the time your brain is showing, Cotter. Sometimes it's dismissive, but free to be free. Yes. Yes. See, yeah, I wonder what LB is doing right now. So true. So true. All right. Let's give it another few minutes. I drank a black tea. Then I had 3/4 of a matcha. Then I had 32 ounces of water. So I need to use the restroom again, but I'm going to let him say something. I'm going to engage with him for another couple of minutes. And then we're going to move into the water philosophy video. And then we're going to do Valor Reacts at 1 p.m. Yeah. Jonah says, in his rage, Connor Skywalker killed the soilings. That's what happened, bro. That's what happened. It appears that in your rage, you killed AF Racing. Like that's what happened. Whoops. Grassroots says, yeah, we banned LB the old-fashioned way, really pissing her off. Yeah, exactly. Anonymous Chatter says, my issue with BRICS is it creates intertwining relations that existed in the build-up to World War II. We already have the economic territory disputes that create political unrest. Could be a nothing ever happens, but it could not be. No, I'm with you there. Do it. Do it. Thank you for the 20, by the way, King. We are 1 away from the goal. We got 50 minutes to do it. Like I said, I've probably drinking 60 ounces of liquid in the past, like 45 minutes to an hour. I need to go handle that. I'll be right back. Fellrunner says, unban Doobie and tag him. Okay, I will. Not right now, though.
To hell. Like, things have to matter. We have to care. We have to, log these things and then eventually hold these fuckers accountable.
Day 2, Kyle, in the bag.
Let's start with China.
Trump, and what was likely an Adderall-fueled bender, decided that China was being mean, and so he decided that there would be 100% tariffs.
Trump saying, quote, everything will be fine. It's not exactly the confidence boost.
Congressional Republicans nowhere to be found as Trump unconstitutionally usurps their authority. And we're looking at Twitter to go into what China's strategy is for dealing with Trump and his nonsense.
So now they're in a position where they can play this, what he describes as the rare earth card.
And here's where the China glazing starts. Krystal here reaches for every word to explain how China has been pivoting to state capitalism without specifically saying state capitalism.
The promise and the peril of a more planned economy.
Yeah.
Because the Chinese are executing this extremely well. You know, the amount, when you look at the number of people who have been lifted out of poverty over the past number of decades, overwhelmingly, that is because of growth in China. Like the number of their rapid economic growth and the number of their own people that they've been able to lift out of poverty is truly like one of the great economic miracles in history. They rejected the path that we, pushed on like the former Soviet Union of like this neoliberal shock doctrine. Saw that did not go well and understood the global international system well enough to basically sort of use it and for their own end. So they've been able to accomplish something that is extraordinary because it's been driven by the top.
Then they talk about the government shutdown leading to Trump and the Project 2025 writer Russ Vought cutting a ton of government jobs, and it's weird. They do say the Democrats have a better position in this fight since the base is behind it and they have effective leverage, but they can't help going in on them anyway.
From the perspective of like average normie Democrat, it's starting to look dire for how Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. I mean, if I were average normie Democrat, I would have zero confidence in either Chuck Schumer or Hakeem Jeffries at this point at all, both on the politics.
And Tagarung. Yeah, I killed Tagarung as well. My bad.
And on the substance.
They certainly feel pressured from their base. Like, y'all got to stand up. You got to do something. And then
they look so dumb when they're trying to stand up. Like, I agree.
Yeah, they're not great at it.
Just, trust the Republican Party, let those subsidies lapse, pay double in your monthly premiums. Everything's good. Like, that is an insane argument to make.
Yeah.
On the other hand, for Republicans to come to the table with Democrats on healthcare subsidies for non-citizens is also like Republicans are not going to do that.
It's a good thing Democrats haven't supported that then. For years already, Medicaid has been obligated to cover any life-threatening emergency that people come to a hospital with, regardless of their legal status.
I was going to say, like, it's the same thing with what we were talking about the tariff policy earlier in the show, which is that, like, in theory, there's a way to do this that is coherent and makes sense and would be a bitter pill for the neoliberals to swallow. And in the same way with like the theory of Doge could be a bitter pill for like the, the federal unions to swallow and the quote swamp to swallow.
We already had federal audits for government waste and corruption. That's part of why they didn't actually find any.
Adonic Samuel says, Cotter, we know you were pooping. Dude, I could not poop that fast. If I was gone for several minutes, I don't need to get into the details, but that was not a poop. Oh my God. Oh, how can we have a conversation about Zionism without Doobie? I know it feels like cheating, doesn't it? Let me go ahead and wrap this and do the water thing, not the water thing. Yeah, let me do the This Is Water thing philosophical video real quick. But let me also put a nice little bow on this. So I think that Kyle, once again, I would party with Kyle. Okay, I would smoke if Kyle offered me a vape pen filled with THC, I would take a hit. And then I'd be happy to stretch and do some yoga and talk to him about politics and all that kind of stuff. But I would be yelling at him the whole time because I think he's a contrarian, Noam Chomsky style, anti-American imperial, economic populist dipshit. So while I would totally have fun debating Kyle, I still think he's a dipstick. And then same thing with Krystal. Like, Krystal, you mean your anxiety pen? True. That's what I call it. But then with, you mean the pen that gives you anxiety? I know that's a reference to Dean Withers when he freaked out during a debate and he was like screaming like, I need my anxiety pen. And I know he was mostly memeing when he was doing that, but it was funny. But I think like the anxiety pen concept is mad funny because like for him, for some stoners, they hit weed so they reduce their anxiety. There is no way on the planet that smoking weed would ever reduce my anxiety. It's like a spiritual enema. Like marijuana makes me so body conscious and makes me so aware of all of the ideas that are floating just underneath my like subconscious level. Like dude, no, there's no way on the planet that marijuana ever reduces my anxiety, you know? Like it makes me ride Marijuana makes me ride my anxiety like a bull. That's what it does. It makes me jump onto the back of my anxiety and try to pull it apart while it's trying to buck me off and send me for a panic attack. It is fun, though. Anyways, whereas Crystal Ball, I've mentioned that she's pretty. I think that she is astute and insightful enough to have like a cool political conversation with, but she is also a contrarian pain in the ass. And I've seen herself bend herself into total knots trying to keep the anti-establishment, swamp, deep state, military industrial complex, shit alive, while also sweeping for some of the dumbest shit on the fucking planet. And so that's where I resent these people. I think they're silly. I think their fame and finances are unearned in the fact that a lot of their perspectives are incredibly stupid. But once again, if I was able to like get ripped and hang out with them and yell at them about politics, it could be fun. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of the end of that segment. So we're gonna go watch the Rob video. That's a philosophy video. He said that he sent me a primer, but I'm gonna read a few chats. Also, you guys have already smashed 2 goals today, and we've only been live for 2 hours, so that's great. That's fantastic. I'm going to reset the goal, but I have 0 expectations of being able to complete it. I said earlier in the stream that Christmas was a little scary to me. Okay, December was a little scary to me because the first 2 weeks were slow. But I think what was going on was everybody was saving up for Christmas, and they wanted to make sure that, number 1, they could pay their bills. Number 2, they could take care of their families. And number 3, they could get everybody kick-ass presents. What happened towards the end of the month, though, was you guys were like, oh, yeah, Christmas is over. Fuck it. Here's all my cash. And so we had an amazing December. And what I would say is, without breaking a sweat, we probably hit 80% of what we did in December. And I have to thank you for that. So thank you to the Oilers. Thank you to the Chippers. Thank you to the routine watchers. Thank you to the VOD viewers. Thank you to everybody. You guys have given me an amazing January. Okay. So I'm just going to engage with chat real quick, and then we're going to launch into the philosophy video. So real quick, Jeb, hold on. Grassroots says, a Coke straw is nothing but a pen that gives you anxiety. Okay. Jeb says, I would make weed brownies with Kyle and do a breakdown of each episode of the Filoni Clone Wars. That sounds like a good time. Jonah says, that shit makes my anxiety worse. Me too. You gotta jump onto your anxiety like a bull and ride it. Randy Chang says, in a parallel universe, there's a TV show with Ved, Sunil, and Doobie on a 4-hour Vegas road trip arguing over whose turn it is to play music. True. It's Harold and Kumar goes to White Castle, but instead it's Ved and Doobie go to Vegas. Doobie and Ved go to Vegas. Ved and Doobie go to Vegas. Whichever one sounds best. Just Julius says, I used to smoke a bunch. Now I can't because I feel like I can feel everything inside my body and it's so uncomfortable. Well, just Julius, same thing. Okay. And I used to not do it for a while, but some things have changed. And so what I've done recently, twice, I've only done it twice. But recently I did it twice and I just stretched. That's all I did. I just listened to my body. I felt the heartburn. I felt the gas. I felt the pain in my hip. I felt the pain in my lower back. I felt the pain in my shoulders. I felt the pain in my neck. And it was so overwhelming to move. Like I had to move. But what ended up happening was, because of the pain and my desire to move, I just drank a ton of water. I ate an incredible amount of fruit and vegetables, and I just stretched. And so I moved my hip into a better position. I moved my lower back into a better position. I moved my shoulders and neck, not in a way that was going to throw me off, but in a way that was comfortable. And then I laid down and I kind of stretched out things that hadn't been stretched out in a while. And I could feel the sore muscles, and I could feel the parts of my body that I'd been ignoring for a long time and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that, especially with PTSD, man, especially with being a veteran, military veteran, law enforcement veteran, whatever, there's so many spiritual and physical injuries that you ignore for very, very long time periods that they accumulate. And when you ignore them for so long and then you get THC into your system, you're overwhelmed by the spiritual and physical pain. And so it can send you down a bad path, and it can be really uncomfortable, and it can hurt you a lot. And therefore, it's not worth doing. But I would say that, once again, that was true for me for a really, 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 really long time. But recently, I was able to ride the proverbial dragon without being damaged by it. Dana says, physiological opposite effect with most prescriptions. True. Jonah says, I tried weed to help me sleep once. I didn't sleep. Worst mistake of my life. Well, you should have pounded water, eaten fruits and vegetables, and stretched like a motherfucker. Jen Winkler says, panic attacks. Used to do it forever, but once I had an attack, never could smoke again. Yep. Stretch, eat vegetables, drink water. That's what you need to do. If you do anything else, it's going to be terrible. QC says, happy Friday to you also. Hi. Pretty sure I have COVID. Feel like trash. Have to stay at work anyways. I'm sorry, Jen. I'm sorry. Get out of there as soon as you can. Theus Halcyon with the gifted membership. Thank you, King. I appreciate you. Hedonic Samuel says, I microdose mushroom gummies. They make legal non-psilocybin ones that are amazing. Tell me more in private. Sacred Snow says, Valor Media Network. That's the Bollywood version of Harold and Kumar. So true. Fellrunner says, the level 1 saga is over. You say that. Fashion 40 says, I literally smoke so I can feel something other than doomer pilled. Well, you might be doing a little bit too much then, buddy. You might be doing a little bit too much then. But that's funny. And yeah, maybe dial it back, Fashion 40. Yeah, that trip is going to end up with Ved Sunil in jail and Doobie 6 feet under. Yeah. It should be like a dramatic dark comedy. Harold and Kumar Goes to White Castle is a comedy, whereas Ved and Doobie Go to Vegas should be like a dark comedy. Yeah, Dana says, absolutely 100%. The enhanced stretch after that is celestial yoga. True. What do I type into Amazon to find that stretch bar you're always using? Theracane. 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 That's amazing. Old School says, come on, Connor, you got to shove all those fears and PTSD into the closet. The screaming in the middle of the night is just normal. I know. Fellrunner says, Connor, are you going to talk with Desi about ice bullshit? Maybe. But we're gonna do Rob's video first. Is that why I lost 10 people? Because we're covering Kyle and whatever. But let me take a look real quick. Destiny streamer, YouTube Destiny. I might talk to him about it. Whenever I lose like 10 people at like noon, it's because some fucking lib has gone live. It's okay. It's not Steven. That's fine. The Expanse. I uploaded a new breakdown of The Expanse on Counterpoint Sci-Fi. So if you're into sci-fi, go watch that. Yesterday, I did release a new Counterpoint Star Wars episode. I was breaking down General Grievous. It was amazing. So go watch both of those. But for now, I'm going to go into Discord and I'm going to pull Rob's philosophy video that I think he either oiled or chipped for right before he went on a 2-week break. And I was like, I'll watch it. I promise I'll watch it. So this is Rob. I'm going to read it real quick. Second link. It's old enough that there isn't a video of the speech. My spiel. This is a graduation commencement speech from 2005 by an author and a professor. His most well-known writing is Infinite Jest, which, as I understand it, is an incredibly dense fractal weave of narratives about a society dealing with hyper-addictive entertainment. Jesus Christ. But I've not read it yet. He struggled with depression, alcoholism, and ultimately took his own life in 2008. That's sad. The speech is full of philosophical themes from his background in modal logic, but presented without technical jargon and all of that stuff. Okay. Let's take a look at it. Prop logic. This is Water, David Foster Wallace commencement speech. So let's take a look.
Anybody feels like perspiring, I'd invite you to go.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this guy up. We're going to watch him on a 1.1. I am going to break it down every now and then when he says something deep. And if you're not ready for something deep or philosophical or interesting in reference to our current political moment, then this probably isn't for you. So I'll forgive you if you say, I was just here for you to make fun of Kyle Kulinski for being a drunken pothead uncle who says weird shit at the party. Deathloop says Destiny is not streaming for the next 5 days. Ooh, I wonder why. Anyways, I'm going to talk about okay. Like the stream, share it with your friends, engage with chat, super chats if you got them, memberships if you got them. My name's Connor. We're going to check out some philosophy bullshit, and we're going to hang out as a group. Let's do it.
Go ahead, because I'm sure going to. In fact, I'm going to get right here. Greetings, thanks, and congratulations to Kenyon's graduating class of 2005. There are these two young fish swimming along, and they happen to meet an older fish swimming the other way, who nods at them and says, "Morning, boys, how's the water?" And the two young fish swim on for a bit, and then eventually one of them looks over at the other and goes, "What the hell is water?" This is a standard requirement of U.S. commencement speeches, the deployment of didactic little parable-ish stories. The story thing turns out to be one of the better, less bullshitty conventions of the genre. But if you're worried that I plan to present myself here as the wise older fish explaining what water is to you younger fish, please don't be. I am not the wise old fish. The point of the fish story is merely that the most obvious, important realities are often the ones that are hardest to see and talk about. Stated as an English sentence, of course, this is just a banal platitude. But the fact is that in the day-to-day trenches of adult existence, banal platitudes can have a life or death importance. Or so I wish to suggest to you on this dry and lovely morning. Of course, the main requirement of speeches like this is that I'm supposed to talk about your liberal arts education's meaning, to try to explain why the degree you're about to receive has actual human value instead of just a material payoff. So let's talk about the single most pervasive cliche in the commencement speech genre, which is that a liberal arts education is not so much about filling you up with knowledge as it is about, quote, teaching you how to think. If you're like me as a student, you've never liked hearing this, and you tend to feel a bit insulted by the claim that you've needed anybody to teach you how to think, since the fact that you even got admitted to a college this good seems like proof that you already know how to think. But I'm going to posit to you that the liberal arts cliche turns out not to be insulting at all, because the really significant education in thinking that we're supposed to get in a place like this isn't really about the capacity to think, but rather about the choice of what to think about.
Ooh. I like that. I've been thinking about that recently. Not just that, but I do want to point this out. So one of the things that I was filled with as a young man was unending confidence about my own intelligence, which has not wavered with time. I joke about taking a lot of brain injuries in the military. I joke about doing a lot of drugs as a high schooler. I joke about how stupid and arse-slurred I can be, because I do try to like take myself down a peg, because I've been so wrong about so many things throughout my life that I simultaneously hold my own intelligence in high regard, and yet know my own intelligence has led me into incredibly stupid shit in the past that I cannot pretend to be like I joke about it, but I'm not like an omniscient God incapable of being incorrect. As a matter of fact, humility has kicked me in the balls enough times to know that the opposite is true, that I can be wildly confident about a topic and still get my dick kicked in. And so an example of this is when I was very young, and not very young, but when I was going to college, I thought I could do this job. I thought I could create content. I thought that I could be the smartest motherfucker in the room, debate, and, you know, everybody would recognize my brilliance, and I could be charismatic and funny and build a community and this, that, the other. And you know, this was probably like 2012. So YouTube was still very young. But I put off that project because I knew that I wanted to get my 4-year degree and also do law enforcement first. So I put off that dream. But looking back at how much I learned over the ensuing decade compared to what I know now, and the truth is that I was not in control of what I was thinking about. I was slave to a lot of powerful gods that I did not understand, that were dragging me in a lot of directions. Not just that, and I still think that's true to this day, but not just that. I look back at some of the prideful statements that I made at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm a total fucking dumbass. So I appreciate what this guy has said so far.
If your total freedom of choice regarding what to think about seems too obvious to waste time discussing, I'd ask you to think about fish and water, and to bracket for just a few minutes your skepticism about the value of the totally obvious. Here's another didactic little story. There are these two guys sitting together in a bar in the remote Alaskan wilderness. One of the guys is religious, the other's an atheist, and the two are arguing about the existence of God with that special intensity that comes after about the fourth beer. And the atheist says, look, it's not like I don't have actual reasons for not believing in God. It's not like I haven't ever experimented with the whole God and prayer thing. Just last month, I got caught away from camp in that terrible blizzard, and I was totally lost, and I couldn't see a thing, and it was 50 below. And so I tried it. I fell to my knees in the snow and cried out, oh God, if there is a God, I'm lost in this blizzard, and I'm going to die if you don't help me. And now, in the bar, the religious guy looks at the atheist all puzzled. Well, then you must believe now, he says. After all, here you are, alive. The atheist just rolls his eyes. No, man, all that was a couple Eskimos happened to come wandering by and they showed me the way back to camp. It's easy to run the story through a kind of standard liberal arts analysis. The exact same experience can mean two totally different things to two different people, given those people's two different belief templates and two different ways of constructing meaning from experience. Because we prize tolerance and diversity of belief, nowhere in our liberal arts analysis do we want to claim that one guy's interpretation is true and the other guy's is false or bad. Which is fine, except we also never end up talking about just where these individual templates and beliefs come from, meaning where they come from inside the two guys. As if a person's most basic orientation toward the world and the meaning of his experience were somehow just hardwired, like height or shoe size, or automatically absorbed from the culture, like language.
By the way, I don't know where he's going with this, but I think it's both. So I think that we have temperamental instincts. I actually think that I would be temperamentally liberal, but I was raised in a conservative culture, and therefore, despite my temperamental tolerance of different worldviews and trying to appreciate that not everybody is going to have my lived experience, therefore, on things that are not important, I need to be tolerant towards other people who view the world differently. But there are hard lines that I say, like, no, this shit is just straight up bad and it's going to fuck you up. That comes from being raised in a conservative culture. And what happened was, being raised in a conservative culture, I saw people overcorrect by completely rejecting everything they had ever been taught about life from a conservative perspective and totally destroy their lives. And then I saw people hold on to conservatism with such a dogmatic view of the way that these stories are told to them that they effectively limited their own experience to be within like a completely safe bubble of predictable behavior based off of conservative dogma. And so as a result, I kind of realized it's like neither one of these is great. Becoming like a heroin addict, atheist, nihilist, hedonist piece of shit because you no longer believe in God because you're like an edgy boy in your teenage years and you never grow out of it. That's dumb as fuck. So is never experiencing anything because you think that the world is so rock solid based off of what you were taught as a child that you never learn or change or evolve or you know, try to test your own principles against the hardships of the world. And so for me, I have found my most like valuable experiences in the middle between those two. And so if it seems like I'm simultaneously a see you next Tuesday about your guys' world perspectives, particularly if you're not giving me evidence for the way that you think about the world, and I'm giving you evidence and you're not reciprocating by giving me your evidence, you know, my apologies for being so like prideful so as to think that I'm correct and you're wrong. But also if it seems like I'm also weirdly tolerant of people who are different than me, who have different goals and all that kind of shit, it's also because like, I don't dogmatically hold that my path is the only path to like spiritual, existential, political, material fulfillment. You know, like there are 10,000 paths through the human life, and not all of them are wrong. So Jen Winkler says Connor forgets we have a character limit. Lol. True. I do argue as though you capture all of your argumentation into a few sentences, which is probably unfair, but it's an advantage that I enjoy. So I can dunk on you because I can talk extemporaneously for 5 minutes and you can type like 3 sentences. Jim Baker says, hello, Connor and Coggers. Hello, Jim Baker, my favorite FBI agent. We are listening to a philosophical commencement speech from 2005 of a guy who killed himself in 2008 But so far, it's like liquid hot philosophical fire. So we're going to continue. Liquid promethium, if you will.
As if how we construct meaning were not actually a matter of personal, intentional choice. Plus, there's the matter of arrogance. The non-religious guy is so totally certain in his dismissal of the possibility that the passing Eskimos had anything to do with his prayer for help. True, there are plenty of religious people who seem arrogantly certain of their own interpretations too. They're probably even more repulsive than atheists, at least to most of us. But religious dogmatist's problem is exactly the same as the story's unbeliever: blind certainty. A closed-mindedness that amounts to an imprisonment so total that the prisoner doesn't even know he's locked up. The point here is that I think this is one part of what teaching me how to think is really supposed to mean: to be just a little less arrogant, to have just a little critical awareness about myself and my certainties. Because a huge percentage of the stuff that I tend to be automatically certain of is, it turns out, totally wrong and deluded.
Yeah. So I have to thank Jordan Peterson. I know a lot of you guys don't like him. I have to thank Jordan Peterson for saving me from the prison of certainty. Okay. So I craved certainty. Being raised with a modernist perspective of the world, you kind of understand that a lot of the world can be understood. It can be understood through science. It can be understood through studies. It can be understood through technical analysis. And so as a result, you kind of crave the certainty, but you crave the certainty in all aspects of your life. You crave certainty in the way that you conduct your relationships. You crave certainty in your own physical and material security. You crave certainty in your spiritual outlook, or at least I did. And I craved certainty in my spiritual life and what happens to you after you die. I wanted to know definitively if there was an afterlife and if I behaved in a certain way, if I would be worthy of living in said afterlife. And I wanted to know if there was a God who was a conscious being who understood the world. And in my desire for certainty, I was constantly disappointed by the world because the world is filled with so much uncertainty. And I had an extreme amount of anxiety about the uncertainty of the world, because what is uncertain is not controllable. What is not absolute is not, you can't master what you don't understand. So if you don't understand vast aspects of reality, you're kind of fucked, And then I realized, and it was partially Jordan Peterson, it was partially life experience, but I realized that I could accept uncertainty. I didn't have to like uncertainty. I just had to accept it as real. And so not understanding life or spirituality or death or what happens after you die or an afterlife or morality, or if any of this matters at all, there's an absurdity to it that kind of defies explanation. And so you can accept that or you can fight that. And so I got tired of fighting. You know what I'm saying? I just got tired of fighting. So I just accepted that the world is an uncertain place. I don't know what happens after I die. I'm still intensely interested in life and in spirituality and in politics and in my life and in the lives of the people I love. And so I'm not going to rush it. I'm just going to enjoy the ride of life. And I'm going to accept the uncertainty that comes with that calculation. Sacred Snow says, don't worry about the character limit, Connor. When I use copy paste and loophole the character limit, you just read over and miss the nuanced bits anyway. Well, there you go. There you go. Conservative liberalism says, if you were certain of everything, there'd be nothing left to explore, and that'd be boring as hell. True. Yeah. Kay says, it's too bad this guy didn't take his own advice. True. True. I know a lot of people like that who are very existentially profound, and yet they are incapable of integrating their profundity into a coherent worldview, and it drives them fucking crazy. And oftentimes they self-medicate through alcohol or drugs, or they just end up killing themselves. So that need for certainty, that need for rock solid foundation, it can drive you insane. And so it does make me sad, because this guy looks like what? He probably looks like how old I am now. He probably looks like he's in his late 30s. And this is a speech in 2005. He took his own life in 2008. So probably in his early 40s, he took his life. He could have had another 40 years of being a philosophically interesting, profound commentator on existence, and he ended his trip early because he probably drove himself fucking crazy. So, Vazraka, thank you for being my favorite lurker, and thank you for your gifted membership. I appreciate you, Vazraka. And Rob says, I chipped Connor a few months back to watch this. Yes. Let's go for it, though.
I have learned this the hard way, as I predict you graduates will too. Here is just one example of the total wrongness of something I tend to be automatically sure of. Everything in my own immediate experience supports my deep belief.
Jonah says, it's like Bloodborne. The higher your insight, the more susceptible you are to psychic damage. Bruh, did you just summarize this channel? Did you just summarize my YouTube career? I feel like I'm an incredibly insightful person, but as a result, I'm incredibly susceptible to psychic damage. And I try to like absorb as much psychic damage as I possibly can for other insightful people. Bro, you just summarized the Counterpoints channel. Thank you for that.
That I am the absolute center of the universe. The realest, most vivid and important person in existence. We rarely talk about this sort of natural basic self-centeredness because it's so socially repulsive, but it's pretty much the same for all of us. It is our default setting, hardwired into our boards at birth. Think about it. There is no experience you have had that you are not at the absolute center of. The world as you experience it is there in front of you or behind you, to the left or right of you, on your TV or your monitor, and so on. Other people's thoughts and feelings have to be communicated to you somehow, but your own are so immediate, urgent, real. Please don't worry that I'm getting ready to lecture you about compassion or other directedness or all the so-called virtues. This is not a matter of virtue. It's a matter of my choosing to do the work of somehow altering or getting free of my natural hardwired default setting, which is to be deeply and literally self-centered, and to see and interpret everything through this lens of self. People who can adjust their natural default setting this way are often described as being well-adjusted, which I suggest to you is not an accidental term. Given the triumphant academic setting here, an obvious question is how much of this work of adjusting our default setting involves actual knowledge or intellect. This question gets very tricky.
Ooh, hold on. I'm not making any predictions. I'm really enjoying it so far. But the virtue, so I haven't talked about this a lot recently, but I've mentioned it in the past. My father, but yeah, Kazra's still alive, Giga Impact. Kazra's still alive. We're all thankful for that. The Nicomachean Ethics. Okay. So the Nicomachean Ethics are like 11 virtues. And it's like, as a matter of fact, I should just Google them. But it's something that Aristotle came up with. And apparently what he argued is that like human beings are best when they pursue virtue. But the virtues that we pursue, if they're done to too little, they become vices. And if you do them too much, they become vices. And so actually leading the quote unquote good life is insanely difficult. And what my father said is that what's interesting about the Nicomachean Ethics is not only does Aristotle make a series of arguments saying why you should pursue these virtues, but then he also argues at the end of each virtue, like, well, maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about and you got to figure out your own shit. So he undermines his own argumentation after making an impassioned appeal to like try to get people to pursue virtue. Yeah. And Joda says, I lived, bitch. Kazra probably. Nah, Kazra sounds like I lived, bitch, but very, very, very surprised by their own survival. But anyways, like courage, right? Temperance, liberality, which is generosity, magnificence, magnanimity, proper ambition and pride, patience, truthfulness, wittiness, friendliness, and modesty. And so if you take a look at this, even in this AI summary, they have the negative and positive virtue. So for courage, there's cowardice and recklessness. For temperance, there's overindulgence and there's insensitivity or prohibitionism. In liberality, there's stinginess and extravagance. So all in all, like, not only do you have the virtues, you have the way to calibrate these virtues. And so my argument to you guys is that within the pursuit of virtue, because this is like I think this is like the preliminary backing of virtue ethics. My argument to you is that these are not necessarily the best virtues that you should constantly pursue, but you should be aware of them and pursue them regardless, because if you pursue them and fail, you will be a better human being than if you don't think about them at all. And this is one of my frustrations with like the anti-theistic, atheistic worldview, is that you're like, okay, well, you know, the flying spaghetti monster is all bullshit, and Jesus is all bullshit, and God's all bullshit, and Buddha's all bullshit, and Muhammad's all bullshit, and Abraham's all bullshit. Therefore, why the fuck would I pay attention to principle or virtue or morality or religion or history at all? I'm just going to do whatever makes me feel good. And the truth is that you're probably going to be a miserable, self-centered see you next Tuesday, because all of the philosophies and all of the religions that you reject have already explored these topics ad nauseum. And so while they might not be correct about the metaphysical state of the world and whether or not a conscious God exists and whether or not like sin is an articulable thing that actually is going to have specific consequence, they're correct that considering and pursuing virtue in spite of the tragedy and malevolence of life, you're going to be a better person. And you're probably going to be more content. You might have to abstain from some pleasure, but the pleasure that you abstain from is probably going to come with a lot of pain. And so you have to balance all of these things. So, yeah. Throwing the baby out with the bathwater, most modern atheists are experts at this. Yes. And then Christian Blair says the opposite. He says that's only atheists below the age of 30. I don't think so, Christian. I don't think so. Even with Destiny, man, I think Destiny is an insightful, intelligent, rhetorically gifted person who has the material world by the balls. He has the world at his fingertips from one lens of analysis, which is effectively a materialist analysis. He can do whatever he wants to do, whenever he wants to do it, probably for the rest of his life. And yet, I would say that his obsession with like public reputation and sexual achievement and all of that kind of stuff, it's based in exactly what we're talking about, of throwing the baby out with the bathwater and believing that because God is not literally real, the way that you understood it as a child, virtue and religion and philosophy can be thrown out without secondary consideration because you only get one life, so you might as well pursue pleasure. You know what I'm saying?
Probably the most dangerous thing about an academic education, at least in my own case, is that it enables my tendency to over-intellectualize stuff.
Based.
To get lost in abstract arguments inside my head instead of simply paying attention to what's going on right in front of me.
Based.
Paying attention to what is going on inside me. As I'm sure you guys know by now, it is extremely difficult to stay alert and attentive instead of getting hypnotized by the constant monologue inside your own head. Maybe happening right now.
True.
20 years after my own graduation, I have come gradually to understand that the liberal arts cliche about teaching you how to think is actually shorthand for a much deeper, more serious idea. Learning how to think really means learning how to exercise some control over how and what you think. It means being conscious and aware enough to choose what you pay attention to and to choose how you construct meaning from experience. Because if you cannot exercise this kind of choice in adult life, you will be totally hosed.
This Fashion says, I can't speak for Destiny, but sexual proclivities, which I'm assuming you might mean promiscuity, but that proclivities would work as well, were due to depression. It wasn't until I took meds that I found balance. Correct. We oftentimes use alcohol. We oftentimes use marijuana. We oftentimes use sex. We oftentimes use anger. We oftentimes use all like emotions and drugs addictively. And one of the things I know, I'll just be transparent. I had a friend in town. I haven't smoked reefer in like a decade. I haven't smoked weed. I haven't smoked weed since before I was a cop. And then after being a cop, I did a couple of like THC gummies and I had a really bad experience. I had a horrible experience, like a horrible, overwhelming anxiety attack. And so I was really scared to fuck with THC again. But recently I kind of realized like I need to dig deeper. I need to see what's in there. I need to poke around in my own anxiety and anger and PTSD. And what I realized as soon as I took a hit, number one, I had to stretch like a motherfucker. Number two, I had to like pound water and, you know, drink water and eat fruit and eat vegetables and stretch. So marijuana inspired that. But what I also realized was that I was addicted to and worshiping anger and pain as if it were a god. So the same way that I think Destiny worships Slanesh, even though Slanesh is not real. Okay, Slanesh is not real. Slanesh is the god of excess and pleasure and pain, but pain to excess that then becomes pleasurable again. So I think that Destiny is unironically worshiping pleasure the way other people worship God. And I think that I was worshiping anger and pain the way that other people worship God. And so realizing how much of my life I had dedicated to anger and pain, I was like, I can't do that anymore. It's killing me. Like part of my heartburn, I almost guarantee you is related to constant stress of feeling like I'm at imminent threat of death or great bodily harm because I have experiences that show me how real danger is. And my anger towards you guys as well is that I think that I am over prepared for violence. And I think that you guys are under prepared. So if I was capable of making someone like me, I wouldn't. I would split the difference between a lot of my audience and myself, and I would think that that would be the perfect level of preparedness for violence. And so, yeah, it's but I realized like I didn't want to worship fear anymore. I didn't want to worship anger anymore. I didn't want to worship pain anymore. I wanted to try to be like as sane of a human being as I possibly could be. And so that intentionality of what you choose to think about and how you choose your time. I kind of did like a video essay a while ago. It was called You Are What You Worship. And I kind of want you guys to like seriously consider that. How you spend your time at work, how you spend your time with your family, how you spend your time with your loved ones, how you spend your time doing drugs, not doing drugs, abstinence, alcohol, weed, whatever. What you do is what you worship. It's what you spend your time on is what you worship. And so you need to ask yourself, what gods, even if you don't believe in literal gods, what gods are you serving? If I'm serving anger and pain and fear for broad swaths of my life, what God are you serving?
Think of the old cliche about, quote, the mind being an excellent servant but a terrible master. This, like many cliches, so lame and unexciting on the surface, actually expresses a great and terrible truth.
Christian Blair says that you condemn him for him taking Vyvanse and refocusing away from such activities. He claims so. I have evidence to the contrary. As recently as February of 2025, we shall see if Stephen Bennell II has taken ADHD medication that has allowed him to worship different gods besides pleasure. We shall see, and time will be the evidence.
It is not the least bit coincidental that adults who commit suicide with firearms almost always shoot themselves in the head. They shoot the terrible master. And the truth is that most of these suicides are actually dead long before they pull the trigger.
Uh-oh. He's talking about himself a little bit.
And I submit that this is what the real, no bullshit value of your liberal arts education is supposed to be about. How to keep from going through your comfortable, prosperous, respectable adult life dead, unconscious, a slave to your head and to your natural default setting of being uniquely, completely, imperially alone, day in and day out. That may sound like hyperbole or abstract nonsense.
It's not.
Let's get concrete. The plain fact is that you graduating seniors do not yet have any clue what day in, day out really means. There happen to be whole, large parts of adult American life that nobody talks about in commencement speeches. One such part involves boredom, routine, and petty frustration. The parents and older folks here will know all too well what I'm talking about.
Yup.
By way of example, let's say it's an average adult day and you get up in the morning, go to your challenging white-collar college graduate job, and you work hard for 8 or 10 hours, and at the end of the day you're tired and somewhat stressed, and all you want is to go home and have a good supper and maybe unwind for an hour and then hit the sack early, because of course you have to get up the next day and do it all again. But then you remember there's no food at home. You haven't had time to shop this week because of your challenging job. And so now after work you have to get in your car and drive to the supermarket. It's the end of a workday and the traffic is apt to be very bad. So getting to the store takes way longer than it should. And when you finally get there, the supermarket is very crowded because of course it's the time of day when all the other people with jobs also try to squeeze in some grocery shopping. And the store is hideously fluorescently lit and infused with soul-killing muzak or corporate pop. And it's pretty much the last place you want to be. But you can't just get in and quickly out. You have to wander all over the huge, overlit store's confusing aisles to find the stuff you want. And you have to maneuver your junky cart through all these other tired, hurried people with carts, et cetera, cutting stuff out because it's a long ceremony. And eventually...
Damn. David Foster Wallace would have fucking loved Amazon. I'm sorry for being a dick. Okay. So like this guy, and this is why you can't take yourself too seriously, man. Okay. This guy is talking about the doldrums of the logistics of adult life, and he's resonating on such a deep level, right? He's resonating on such a deep level. Okay. And it's totally true that what can happen is when you're a older person, you can say, well, fuck it, I'm gonna die anyways. Best years are behind me. Only shitty ones left to go. You know, that I'm slave to this. I'm slave to this mortal coil of bullshit. And so as a result, I'm just going to check out early because fuck it. You know, I don't know what's on the other side, but I know this place is going to be a pain in the ass. And yet, what I think is, you know, what gets me through is I think there's an adventure at every step. So I think when you're a kid, you should be the best kid you can be. When you're a teenager, you should be the best teenager you can be. When you're a 20-year-old, you should be the best 20-year-old you can be. When you're a 30-year-old, you can be the best 30-year-old you can be. 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, even 90, okay? There are different kinds of 90-year-olds. There are 90-year-olds who sit there on the couch or in the lazy boy and they melt into the chair and they're waiting for their day to die as dementia and nerve pain overtakes their body. And then there are 80 and 90-year-olds who listen to their body and drink water and eat vegetables and fruit and take care of themselves and try to care for their grandkids and their community members. And they participate in the community and they act like they're never going to die. They act like they're going to live forever because even though they know that they only have a few years left, they want to be involved as much as possible. And weirdly enough, trying to be as involved as possible actually keeps you here for longer. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so that's the thing about Gen X saying, oh, I think 46 is a good age. It probably is a good age. Your 50s are going to be a pain in the ass. 60s are going to be a pain in the ass. 70s are going to be a pain in the ass. 80 plus is going to be a pain in the ass, right? Sacred Snow says true. My grandma is built different. She's like 80 plus and still going to the gym. She's more youthful than me after a long day. Yes. And if you use that youthful attitude of, I'm going to stretch, I'm going to take care of my body, I'm going to pound water, I'm going to eat fruit, I'm going to drink, I'm going to, eat vegetables, I'm going to eat clean, then you can use your energy in order to help out other people, man. You can help out other people. And also, I don't know about you guys, but I love dogs, okay? I think there's something cool about an entire other species pledging their service to us in order to help us defend livestock, defend our homes, be companions to us. And it makes me sad that we destroy millions of them per year through no fault of their own, but only because we can't control their breeding and only because we don't have enough homes to put them in. That makes me sad. And so I'm not going to lie, it's been a huge part of my personality for a long time to not only have dogs in my household, but also to want to run a rescue as I get older. And so when they should learn to bathe themselves. That's true. If they learned how to bathe themselves, we'd be Gucci. But anyways, the point is, like, I've always wanted to run a dog rescue. And even in my 80s or 90s, as long as they don't literally knock me onto the ground and kill me, then I could run a dog rescue until I'm dead. And then my dogs could eat me. You know what I'm saying? I don't want that to happen. But I'm just saying, like, you know, run this bitch until it's ragged. Run this bitch until it's done. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't have to choose. God can choose. You don't have to choose when you go into the next life or oblivion. Let God figure that shit out. That's not for you. You know? Let life figure this out. You don't have to figure all this shit out. And so, yeah, man, that's like straight up, like, we're not going to get through all of this because it's already 12:58. But I want to thank Rob for this. I might even listen to a little bit more while I'm waiting for Dan to text me and say that he's ready. Dan says, blast me a link when ready. Yeah. So I'll blast him a link now. We're going to wrap. As a matter of fact, I want to end here, not because I want to end the content. Rob, thank you for showing this to me. We are going to continue to break this down another day towards the end of the day where we feel like getting introspective and philosophical about that shit, because this is fucking based, man. Like, I get that this guy smoked himself or whatever, but thinking about this kind of shit, and I made the Amazon joke. The reason why I made the Amazon joke is because if this dude could, like, work a 60-hour corporate job, but then he could order all of his groceries on Amazon, have it dropped off on his front doorstep, walk in, prep his own meal, or this motherfucker would have loved DoorDash, right? This dude would have fucking loved DoorDash. Oh, man. If this guy was making six figures, this guy would have fucking loved DoorDash. He would have loved Amazon. It would have alleviated all of his anxiety about shopping, shopping after a long day of work. He would have fucking loved 2025. And so that's the other thing too, is like, this motherfucker would have loved 2025. He would have been like 66. You know what I'm saying? He would have been 65. And if he was rich and if he was getting paid for being a philosopher, and people loved his speeches and loved his books, and he was able to do social commentary, and he was making good cash, and he could DoorDash every meal, and he could Amazon Prime all of his groceries. And if he could use the modern conveniences of technology in order to alleviate some of this, like, doldrums of daily life, then I think he would have loved that shit. Patriarch says, true. Half of the reason I haven't killed myself is food delivery. So true. Rob says, I've been chasing for you to watch this reason. I visit every few years and walk away with new nuggets. It's fantastic. No, it's great. It's great. Can y'all share this link on the Discord, pretty please? Yeah. Rob, I'll do it. I'll share it. No, this is great. We're gonna continue. But Dan says he's ready for us. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna switch over to Twitch. Okay. So if you're interested in hanging out with Dan Pace and me, give me 5 minutes. Let me save this link. A link to the video from Rob that is existentially amazing. Check it out at your own peril/adventure. So I'm going to send that. So the link is in the announcements section. Give me 5 minutes. Let me thank everybody. Let me thank everybody who donated today, because even though it was a slower day, even though we did, Kyle Kulinski and Crystal Ball, our obnoxious content, and we just chilled as a community. And realistically, our highest peak was like 100 viewers or whatever. Slower day, but you guys were incredibly generous, and I need to thank you for it. Hutch's first gun is based. A fucking Colt Anaconda. If my dad bought me a Colt Anaconda, I would forgive him for a lot. My dad's a good man, but my dad could have been infinitely more abusive. And if he bought me a Colt Anaconda as an adult, I would forget. He could have beat me senseless. And if he bought me a Colt Anaconda as an adult, I would forgive him instantaneously. The new one is a lot more normal. I need to take a look at it. Airborne Kite says, what's the Twitch channel? Just Counterpoints, COUNTERPOINTS. So just go to Twitch, twitch.tv, twitch.com, type in Counterpoints. There should be a blue and gold symbol there. You should be able to thank it, or you should be able to find it pretty easily. Should have like 2,000 to 3,000 followers. But I'm going to thank the people who donated today, okay? Anonymous Chatter with the 5. Vazraka with the gifted. Deus Halcyon with the gifted. Hedonic Samuel with the 5. Anonymous Chatter with the 20. Anonymous with the 2. Anonymous with the 5. Jilden with the membership. Anonymous with the 20. Grassroots with the 10. Hedonic with the 10. AK Batusai with the 5. Grassroots with the 20. From the Ashes with the 5. Old School with the 5. Chipingro with the 2. From the Ashes with the 5. Chipingro with the gifted. From the Ashes with the 2. Well, QC with the 20. Sorry for forgetting about you, King. From the Ashes with the 2, Old School with the 5, Old School with the 2, Chipingro with the 2, and Deus Halcyon with the 10 gifted. Thank you for oiling today, King. Okay. I am going to disconnect here. I'll see you on Twitch. Twitch's Counterpoints in about 5 minutes. I'm going to go use a restroom, and I'm going to make sure that I have Black Hawk Down rented. Okay. And then Dan and I will go live. So I'll see you on Twitch on Counterpoints. Parasocial love. Thank you for hanging out. Seriously, I do not deserve you as a chat. Thank you for putting up with all of my bullshit. And I'll see you in 5 minutes. Bye, guys. Volume check. It's going to be loud for the outro song. It's always loud. Matter of fact, fuck that. I won't even do the outro song. Hey, I don't have to blast your earballs anymore. Here we go. Watch it. It's just going to end.